Chapter 481. Isn't it exciting to face so much gold every day? Sulen said with a smile. Yes, yes. Onyx Via nodded her little head repeatedly. Do you want it? Yes, yes. Then guard the treasury carefully. As long as there are no problems, I will take out some as your reward. Sulen said. Really? You're not lying to me? Onyx Via said with shining eyes. Of course it's true, I'm not lying to you. Sulen said with a serious face. After receiving Sulen's guarantee, the little red dragon excitedly rolled around on the golden mountain and muttered, I'm rich, I'm rich. Seeing the little red dragon's appearance, Sulen laughed in his heart. Do you think you can protect this gold? When the time comes, you'll have someone secretly take some of it away and your reward will be gone. Maybe you can use this as an excuse to train her. As an upright king, it was still very fulfilling to train an evil dragon into a new age dragon with good morals. Yes, that's what I'll do. After making arrangements for Onyx Via, Sulen and Hathaway went to the secret realm together. He had already enslaved 2 giant magma elementals. With these 2 giant magma elementals, the resources to build the obsidian factory were almost ready. Sulen now needed to choose a suitable location, preferably an extinct volcano. If there really wasn't one, then he could only create it himself. Sulen didn't find any volcanoes in the northern wilderness, but there were still some hot springs in the northern wilderness. The presence of hot springs meant that the underground magma was still very active. Sulen and Hathaway began to use spells in the secret realm to search. He planned to build the obsidian factory in the secret realm. After some searching, Sulen finally found that the magma under a mountain in the secret realm was very active. There were also some hot springs distributed here. Sulen used the spring surge spell to observe the situation underground, then began to prepare the array with Hathaway. Since there was no volcano, he could only use the power of the magma elementals to create a small crater. He brought the 2 giant magma elementals here and commanded them to turn the surrounding land into magma. At the same time, Sulen and Hathaway also cast their magic power and guided the power of the 2 magma elements deeper. Under their mana, the originally hard rocks quickly softened and the bodies of the 2 lava elementals started burning. The lava on their bodies quickly flowed and slid down their bodies. The surrounding rocks quickly turned into lava and the bodies of the 2 lava elementals gradually swelled up. Sulen and Hathaway used their magic to guide the magma elemental power down. Wherever the magma elemental power passed, the rocks and soil underground would turn into magma. This power did not stop despite the obstruction of the soil and rocks, and continued to spread deep underground. Along with the powerful surge of magic power, the originally calm mountain range constantly issued a series of rumbling sounds. The earth trembled violently, as if there was a huge monster under the ground that wanted to rush out. Rumble. Scorching magma spewed out from the ground and a large amount of rocks and soil were directly overturned. The original mountain top was directly overturned hundreds of meters away and the entire mountain pass turned into a magma pool. The surging magma continued to spurt out and then flowed down the mountain, but most of it cooled and hardened in the flow. Sulen and Hathaway floated above the crater and commanded the 2 lava elementals to build the magma pool according to their ideas. Obsidian was a very important strategic resource. Many places required the use of this material. For example, the floating city was best built entirely out of obsidian. At the same time, the obsidian golems also required large amounts of obsidian. An obsidian factory was a must. With the power of the 2 lava elementals, they communicated with the underground magma and then completely changed the environment here into a volcanic crater. Next, they needed to build the obsidian factory near this volcanic crater. Sulen directly dug out caves in the volcano and then guided the magma out of these caves. At the same time, they needed to build an energy channel from the elemental pool to supply the energy consumption of the obsidian factory. When magma cooled down, it was easy to form obsidian, but because of the various impurities in the magma, the quality of the obsidian was also very problematic. Therefore, they needed to make a purification array first and purify the magma through this array. The purified magma could not be used directly. In order to obtain high-quality obsidian, they also needed a magma purification array to purify the magma after purification. After the purified magma was quickly cooled down, it would become obsidian. Hathaway made an ice storm array, which could directly transform the area covered by the array into a world of ice and snow. This environment was very suitable for forming obsidian. The quality of obsidian was divided into 5 grades. The highest grade of obsidian was called the 10 Victory Stone. This was a delicate translucent gem that belonged to the gem grade. This type of obsidian was the most expensive and the most precious. Second-tier obsidian was of lower quality and wasn't transparent, but its magic and physical resistance wasn't inferior to first-tier obsidian. Third-tier obsidian was the most common, and it was also the most commonly used obsidian in floating cities. As for the 4th and 5th grade obsidian, it was basically useless. Sulen built the obsidian factory to produce obsidian above the 3rd grade. The construction of the obsidian factory was very fast. With Sulen and Hathaway using magic, the construction of the entire project was very fast. Hathaway directly flattened an area on the volcano's hillside. Below, she used mud to rock to turn the debris into large rocks and reinforced it with harden to build a platform that covered an area of 500 square meters. The obsidian production line would be placed here. After the magma was led here from the volcano, it would be purified, and then cooled to finally form pieces of obsidian. The obsidian factory could also be automated, but Sulen did not want to use legendary elemental stones in this, so he transferred a steel golem and a few rock golems to the factory. These steel golems and rock golems would be responsible for the operation of the entire obsidian factory. At the same time, the rock golems and steel golems also needed to be modified. Hathaway needed to instill the obsidian production process into these golems. Because he did not use the tower spirit to control the entire factory for fully automatic construction, Su Luan planned to inject the production process of the obsidian factory into these golem puppets. Each golem puppet was responsible for one step. There were still a lot of rock golems in the northern city. Hathaway selected a few rock golems from the wizard tower and brought them to the secret plane. Hathaway came to the center of the secret plane and handed over the control of these golems to Tower Spirit Number 1. At the same time, she instilled the production line technology of the obsidian factory into these golems. Although the soul cores of these magic golems weren't large, it was still possible to imbue them with simple techniques. As for the steel magic golem, Hathaway imbued it with all the maintenance techniques of the obsidian factory. This steel magic golem would act as a technical consultant for the obsidian factory. As the soul energy in several soul crystals was extracted, a huge amount of energy and soul power was instilled into the soul core of the steel golem. As time went by, a large amount of technology was successfully instilled into the soul core of the golem. However, after instilling the knowledge and skills, all the previous combat skills of the steel golem were replaced. This steel golem had completely become a support golem. At the same time, Sulen asked Tower Spirit Number 1 to transfer a few steel golems to guard the obsidian factory to prevent other creatures from approaching and destroying the factory. After instilling the technology, these golems would work in the obsidian factory. They would maintain the normal operation of the factory every day, and at the same time, they would store the obsidian produced in the warehouse according to the grade of the obsidian. When these golems ran out of energy, they would go to the energy channel to recharge. As long as there were no problems, the obsidian factory would continue to produce obsidian. If there were any problems in the factory, the steel golem would first come to repair it. After Hathaway instilled all the maintenance technology of the obsidian factory, this steel golem could solve most of the problems in the obsidian factory. If there was a problem that the steel golem could not solve, Sulen and Hathaway would be notified to come and repair it. After the construction of the main building was completed, the following work was much simpler. Because the construction of the obsidian factory was rushed, many details needed to be supplemented. These tasks would be completed soon. The raw material of the obsidian factory was magma. The 2 magma elementals would constantly transport magma from the depths of the ground. This work was difficult for others, but it was very easy for the 2 magma elementals. After all, they were born with the ability to manipulate magma. And with their existence, the magma pool would not cool down. After checking again, Hathaway nodded to Sulen. Everything was normal, and then she started the production line of the obsidian factory. Scorching magma spewed out of the channel, and then flowed along the pipeline into a purification circle. As the circle operated, a strange magic wave appeared, and all the magma passing through here was purified of impurities. These impurities were not useless. These impurities contained various metal substances, which would be collected and sent to the blacksmith workshop for smelting. Then, the magma entered the purification circle. After these two processes, a stone golem next to him opened the gate, and energy rushed out. The whole circle was activated, and the magma quickly cooled down under the effect of the circle. A piece of obsidian appeared in front of him. Chapter 482. The surging magma flowed into it, and after a quick cooling, pieces of obsidian appeared on the workbench. Sulen picked up a piece of obsidian that was still warm and examined it. Third-grade obsidian had met the production requirements. This obsidian production line was mainly used to produce third-grade obsidian. Sulen collected all the newly produced obsidian for inspection. The new factory had just opened, and the quality of the obsidian produced was not very stable, so some adjustments were needed. His requirements were not high, but at the very least, the obsidian produced had to be of third-grade quality. As for the lower quality obsidian, whether it was the obsidian golem or the floating city, they would not use obsidian of this quality. Hundreds of obsidian stones were quickly appraised by Sulen, and the results were not bad. More than 90% of the obsidian stones were third class or above, and there were more than a dozen second-class obsidian stones. As for the top first-class obsidian stones, there was no such thing as a first-class obsidian stone. For this kind of newly established obsidian factory, it was already very good that the obsidian produced could reach this level. After the obsidian factory was operating normally, Sulen and Hathaway began to make some technical adjustments to the factory. After some adjustments, the obsidian production line began again. With the surge of elemental energy, magma flowed into it again. After a few rounds of purification, obsidian appeared in front of Sulen. After some adjustments, the quality of the obsidian produced this time was obviously higher. Sulen took out all the obsidian in this batch and then tested it again. Sure enough, the results were much better than the last time. 96% of the obsidian in front of him were third grade. This yield was already considered good. If he wanted to continue improving, he would need to upgrade and improve it bit by bit in the future production process. After completing the transformation, Sulen completely activated the entire obsidian factory. A strange energy wave came, and the obsidian factory officially began to operate. One by one, the stone golems began to work, and the steel golem also began to work. After the steel golem started working, Sulen arranged for a few steel golems to patrol outside the obsidian factory. Their current area of protection was the obsidian factory. As long as they did not enter the obsidian factory, they would activate their combat program and attack. In order to protect the obsidian factory, Sulen had also built a sensor formation in the obsidian factory. As long as someone else entered, the sensor formation would be triggered and a signal would be transmitted to the steel golem. At the same time, the obsidian factory would enter a state of alert. Looking at the functioning obsidian factory, Sulen nodded with satisfaction. The production area of the obsidian factory was not large. After the magma entered the production area, it would quickly form obsidian. With sufficient obsidian, the next production line of rock golems would be put on the agenda. Compared to the golem factory, the technology of the obsidian factory was too simple. The most difficult part of this factory was actually the magma production. This factory was mainly to provide raw materials for the future obsidian factory. The technical requirements of the obsidian factory were a bit high. Hathaway was now drawing the blueprints. After the blueprints were completed, the factory would be upgraded. The energy consumption of the obsidian factory was very high. Sulen planned to build a new elemental pool here. At the same time, Sulen also needed to prepare a legendary soul core. The golem factory was generally divided into 3 parts. The first part was carving. The stone needed to be carved, and at the same time, the body parts of the golem had to be made. This part required a high-precision carving process, and at the same time, a set of micro-carving machines was also needed. The second part was the magic pattern inscription on the golem. For this part, a fully automatic magic pattern inscription machine had already been built when the clay golems were produced. After the magic pattern inscription, it would enter the third part. The parts of these golems would be sent to the assembly workshop, where they would be assembled one by one. The assembled golems would be sent to the warehouse. These golems did not have a soul core installed, so they needed to be activated by the wizard himself. Each golem would cost a soul crystal. The rock golem factory was not built for the time being. Sulen and Hathaway left the secret plane. When they left, the two brought back the clay golems they had produced during this time. These clay golems could be used after being activated. However, because the clay golems produced were basic models, they still needed to be modified. For example, a set of cleaning programs and housekeeping programs could be added to them so that these clay golems could become qualified servants. After these clay golems were activated, they would be sent to various parts of the Northwind Tower to work. If it weren't for the high cost of mining clay golems, Sulen could have made a batch of mining golems. Compared to mining clay golems, the kobolds and durgars were obviously more cost-effective. As long as they were given some food and liquor, these kobolds and durgars would complete the work with quality and quantity guaranteed. After the construction of the obsidian factory was completed, Sulen returned to Sanfelto City. After a period of fighting, the Marquis of Savoy finally won a great victory, completely wiping out the few border nobles. These border nobles had originally colluded with other countries and obtained support, wanting to split from the Kingdom of Florence. However, after Alex and Karina fought off the wizards sent by the surrounding countries, the rebels lost their biggest support. Without the intervention of other countries, the strength of these border nobles was no match for the Marquis of Savoy. After a few wild battles, the Marquis of Savoy successfully surrounded Howlwind City. After that, the rebels who were unwilling to admit defeat still refused to come out. They wanted to rely on the city walls to continue resisting. Moreover, it was already winter, and the temperature in Howlwind City began to drop. These rebels began to place their hopes in the winter. When the army couldn't withstand the cold of winter, they would naturally retreat. However, things didn't go according to their plan. These rebels weren't wrong. Although the Marquis of Savoy's army were all northerners, they couldn't fight outside for a long time in winter. They just forgot about the wizards. In fact, these rebels also subconsciously ignored the wizards. As a result, on a dark night, Alex and Karina used flying and invisibility spells to enter Howlwind City. They then used a spell to confuse humans and easily took control of a few groups of soldiers at the city gate. They had them move the miscellaneous items out of the gate and open the gate. The Marquis of Savoy, who had long been prepared, led his army into the city without shedding a drop of blood. This famous city in the northwestern territory of the Kingdom of Florence was easily breached. The remaining rebel leaders didn't even have the chance to escape and were directly captured. After completing the task of quelling the rebellion, the rebellious nobles around Howlwind City were either captured or killed. Only a few were lucky enough to escape. Of course, those who managed to escape were mostly small fries. The Marquis of Savoy had already prepared ahead of time for the main rebellious nobles and captured them as soon as possible. Sulen had already ordered the Marquis of Savoy to not kill the innocent in this mission. Wars in this era were very cruel, and massacres were common. But this time, the target of the war was within his own country. He did not want Marquis Savoy to lead his men to plunder and return home with plentiful spoils of war, only to leave behind a pile of chicken feathers for him. The rebellion this time wasn't because the commoners couldn't survive. It was a power struggle between the nobles, so the ordinary soldiers and commoners were basically coerced. Therefore, these soldiers and commoners were pardoned. After entering the city, the Marquis of Savoy had already restrained the soldiers from looting. At the same time, Alex and Karina stepped forward and beheaded a dozen soldiers who openly disobeyed the order. Only then did the soldiers obediently not take a step forward. After capturing the rebellious nobles, the Marquis of Savoy didn't kill them directly. Instead, he planned to send them to Sulen in Sanfelto. At the same time, the wealth of these nobles was all plundered. The wealth was divided into 4 parts. Sulen took a quarter of it, the Marquis of Savoy took another quarter, and the remaining quarter was used to cover the costs of logistics. The last quarter was the reward for the soldiers. Unlike the soldiers in northern Battlefront City, the Marquis of Savoy's army had very low military expenses. Usually, they would only be able to maintain basic expenses. Only during war would they be given a starting fee. Then, during battles, they would loot. Now that Sulen forbade looting, they naturally had to be given a reward. This model could save a lot of money on raising soldiers, which was also the state of most armies in this world. Apart from the gold and silver, in fact, the biggest harvest this time was the nobles' land, houses, factories, and mines. Apart from a portion of the wealth being rewarded to those who performed well in this battle, most of the rest fell into Sulen's hands. These shops, mines, and real estate were all very valuable. Sulen had already put them under his caravan. As for the land, Sulen was preparing to sell it. These nobles controlled more than 70% of the land in Cold Wind City. Sulen took out some of these lands to recruit refugees, and let others sell the rest. When all these lands were planted next year, the tax revenue of Cold Wind City would definitely reach a new high. Chapter 483. The Marquis of Savoy escorted the rebellious nobles to the capital. Sulen ordered a public trial of these nobles and finally sentenced them to death. As for the relatives of these nobles, they were punished to be slaves. These slaves were not allowed to be pardoned, but the descendants of these nobles could obtain the status of commoners after paying a ransom. For the rebels, Sulen gave them the harshest punishment, and Sulen's punishment of the rebellious nobles' relatives was also approved. Many people even thought that Sulen's punishment was too good for them. In this era, the relatives of the enemy were often dealt with by killing them. The women were sold as slaves, and the children were castrated and sold as slaves. In comparison, Sulen's way of cooking was completely merciful. Sanfelto City. After Sulen successfully defeated the southern rebels, Sulen's prestige also rose to the peak. When he went out to fight, he even left a backup plan. With the cooperation of both inside and outside, he successfully defeated and captured the rebellious nobles. A very important reason for the southern rebellion this time was that the number of nobles in Sanfelto City decreased by 2/3. These nobles were captured, which led to a large amount of wealth being obtained by Sulen. At the same time, he also had enough money and land to reward his soldiers. After cleaning up a group of rebellious nobles, Sulen's control over the kingdom of Florence became stronger and stronger. Now, because the Marquis of Savoy had solved the rebellion in the north, the entire North Wind and part of the south were under Sulen's control. Since Sulen ascended the throne, a series of turmoil had occurred in the kingdom of Florence, and it finally ended with Sulen's victory. Now, Sulen could be said to be the king with the greatest control over the kingdom of Florence in the history of the kingdom of Florence. Kingdom of Florence, Central Plains, Sanfelto City, Champs-Élysées Castle. Numerous carriages were parked outside the castle. The entire castle was brightly lit. Teams of elite soldiers in metal armor and armed with weapons were patrolling around the castle. Outside the castle, well-dressed attendants were busy bringing in plates of delicately prepared food. The magic lamps in the castle lit up the entire hall. The crystal lamps flickered with colorful brilliance, making the gorgeously dressed noble ladies even more charming. Although a large number of nobles in Sanfelto City had been stripped of their titles and imprisoned, it seemed to have nothing to do with these noble ladies. At this time, these noble ladies were divided into small groups and gathered together to whisper. From time to time, their eyes would fall on a young man in the crowd. This banquet was specially held to celebrate the victory of the rebellion. In addition to the original nobles, there were also a large number of soldiers who were rewarded for their merits in this battle. These soldiers could be said to be very popular in Sanfelto City now. Sulen was very generous to his men. Many of them were given titles, and each of them was entrusted with important tasks by him. Since the North Town began to produce rum, white sugar, and high-end perfume, noble banquets had become more and more luxurious. After the economic boom, the social atmosphere gradually became more open. Many nobles would look for their other half at the banquet. Now that the king valued the emerging nobles with military merits, many noble ladies turned their eyes to the young men in the banquet. These people were not only old, but their strength was not bad. Basically, they had reached the level of Grand Knight and Knight Commander. Because they had been practicing martial arts all year round, these people looked extraordinary, energetic, and well-proportioned. They were far from the pale, flimsy, and pale rich young men they had seen before. It was like heaven and earth. Many noble ladies began to take the initiative after observing for a while. These people were very popular now. If they were late and someone else got to them first, they would have nowhere to cry. The atmosphere of noble banquets here was not bad. It was not like those in the south, where both male and female nobles were proud of having a lover. Many people saw having a lover as a reflection of charm. As long as the child was guaranteed to be produced by the husband, having a lover in secret was something that both parties tacitly agreed to. Of course, Sulen sternly refused to participate in these banquets. Guardian nights, masquerade balls, he had never heard of them. Of course, there were also some private rumors that His Majesty used to have a nickname in the south called Little White Dragon with the Silver Spear. According to Lady Elizabeth J. and other aristocratic ladies who did not want to reveal their names, this little white dragon with the silver spear used to be invincible, but she suddenly left 3 years ago. At that time, many people felt sorry for her. There was also a mayor of Cullen City who did not want to reveal his name. He said that the little white dragon with the silver spear went to the north and became a pioneer noble. Of course, Sulen said that these were purely rumors. He had never heard of the little white dragon with the silver spear. It's not me. I didn't. Don't talk nonsense. In addition to celebrating the victory of the rebellion, this noble banquet also provided an opportunity for the new nobles and the nobles who had previously sided with the king to interact. The banquet would last for 3 days. Today was just the beginning. Many noble ladies had just begun to look for targets. They gathered together and discussed clothes and jewelry in low voices. From time to time, they would take some desserts from exquisite porcelain plates. Next to them were 2 silver plates with snow-white sugar and salt for them to taste. The whole banquet was filled with a joyful atmosphere. Sulen and Marquis of Savoy were the most eye-catching people in this banquet. However, no one approached them except for the Queen and Marquis of Savoy's youngest daughter. Alex did not like this kind of environment and did not participate. Karina had already returned to the northern city. As the matriarch of the Drows, she still had a lot of things to do. During this period, Sulen had gradually begun to clean up the territories directly under the kingdom. The size of the embroidered uniform guards did not increase. These embroidered uniform guards were responsible for monitoring the world and the officials in various places. Then, they would send the results to the palace. Those who did not do anything were directly removed from their positions. Those who took bribes, broke the law, and plundered the land were arrested and imprisoned. After Sulen's rectification, the environment of the Kingdom of Florence was slowly changing. He had already formulated a set of city sanitation regulations that all cities in the Kingdom of Florence must abide by. It would not be long before the stinky, polluted, and stacked cities with feces would be brand new. Your Majesty, the Marquis has something to discuss with you. The eldest son of Marquis of Savoy said respectfully after Sulen had a simple conversation with the nobles. Go chat with the ladies. I'll go over there for a while, Sulen said to Phyllis and then left with Vader. What is it? Your Majesty, the Marquis has compiled an account of the spoils of war collected in this war. Your Majesty, please take a look, Vader said respectfully. Sulen nodded. His expression did not change. He was very satisfied with the Marquis of Savoy's actions. It was not difficult to capture the army. His original army had a system that allowed him to clearly know the loyalty of the army. However, the others did not have a system, so they relied more on wealth and goods. In this era, as long as the army had control over personnel and finances, they could basically control the army in their hands. Therefore, Savoy took the initiative to hand these things over to Sulen to express his attitude. In a room on the second floor of the castle, the Marquis of Savoy handed the account book to Sulen for inspection. Although he had never learned how to keep accounts, he relied on his mathematical foundation in his previous life to check the account book. In fact, part of the rewards for the soldiers had already been distributed. The rest would be distributed after Sulen confirmed it. As for the rest of the rewards, it would be distributed by Sulen. After all, it was best to distribute the rewards personally. In his previous life, there was a saying that Sulen strongly agreed with. Only the name of the instrument could be used. What was the name of the instrument? The musical instruments, ornaments, and titles that represented the ruler's rank were the name of the instrument. In other words, the power and position could not be given to others. Things like awarding rewards could not be done by others. Thank you for your hard work. After checking the account book, Su Luan nodded with satisfaction. I'll give you another 10% as your reward. Thank you for your generosity, Your Majesty. Savoy said happily. Next, Savoy prepared a sumptuous banquet. Apart from the Marquis and his son, his youngest daughter, Xanthi, was also accompanying them. Sulen had met Xanthi once before. Today, she was wearing a beautiful low-cut noble lace dress. She had delicate makeup on and an exquisite diamond necklace around her elegant neck. With her fair skin and perky breasts, she looked absolutely stunning. Your Majesty, thank you for your trust in me. Savoy came over to propose a toast. Sulen naturally would not refuse their toast. He raised his glass and downed it in one gulp. After the two drank one, Vader also came forward to make a toast. Then Sandy also came forward to make a toast to Su Luan. They were drinking the high-end rum produced in the northern town. Although this kind of rum tasted a little sweet, its alcohol content was not lower than that of vodka. Although it was drunk without feeling anything, it was easy to get drunk if one was not careful. Xanthi's alcohol tolerance was not good. After a few glasses of rum, her face turned red and her bright eyes became even more moist. Under the illumination of the light, she was mesmerizing. However, Sulen did not see it. He was currently dealing with Savoy and Vader's toasts. At this time, Sulen realized that something was not right. The two of them were drinking until their faces were red. They were still pulling Sulen to propose toasts. They were obviously trying to get him drunk. With Sulen's physique of over 50 points, his resistance to alcohol was very high. It was not easy to get him drunk. As for whether they had other motives, Sulen was not worried. Savoy's loyalty had always been 100%. He would not do anything to betray him. Therefore, Sulen decided to go with the flow and get drunk. P.S. To make up for yesterday. Chapter 484. Seeing that Sulen had finally passed out, the Marquis of Savoy and his son heaved a sigh of relief. If he hadn't passed out, they would have been the ones to pass out. Today, they had thoroughly experienced Sulen's alcohol tolerance. The two of them had already used magic potions to temporarily increase their physical fitness. Even so, they had almost passed out. The Marquis of Savoy sat down on a chair and heaved a heavy sigh of relief. It's finally over. Hurry up and arrange for someone to send His Majesty over. Also, send your sister over. The Marquis of Savoy glanced at Xanthi, whose eyes were already hazy with drunkenness. Burp. Vader burped and shook his head. Don't worry, Father. I've already arranged it. As he spoke, Vader stood up unsteadily. His arm groped around the cabinet at the side for a while. The originally seamless wall suddenly opened up to reveal a passageway. A few maids who had been waiting for a long time walked out from the passageway. Be careful. Send His Majesty to the room upstairs. Also, send Miss Xanthi up too. Vader instructed everyone to start moving. The maids were all strong and strong. 4 of them worked together to help Sulen up, while the other 2 supported the drunk Xanthi. With the help of another maid, Vader staggered all the way to a luxuriously decorated bedroom upstairs. He placed Su Len and Xanthi on the big bed. "Sister, it's all up to you this time. As your brother, I can only help you this much." After saying that, he patted Xanthi and left unsteadily. At the same time, he closed the door behind him. Vader shook his head, and then said to the maids, "All of you stay here tonight. Don't let anyone in to disturb His Majesty. Do you understand?" "Yes." The maids hurriedly lowered their heads and responded. "If things go wrong, you know the consequences. Of course, if everything goes well, you will receive a generous reward tomorrow and regain your freedom." After settling everything, Vader returned to report to the Marquis of Savoy. Of course, after the door was closed, Su Len slowly opened his eyes as he turned around and took a look at Sandy, who was lying beside him. At this moment, Sandy's beautiful face was very red. Due to being drunk, she was a bit confused. Her delicate facial features, white skin and delicate fragrance made Sullen's heart feel like being scratched by a kitten's paw. This Marquis of Savoy actually did such a thing. It's simply amazing. Since he delivered himself to my doorstep, I'll eat him. Eat it. Or should I eat it? Forget it. Since they are so enthusiastic, I really can't refuse them. Just accept them. Su Len quickly made a decision. What was the point of being pretentious at this time? Men were creatures that could never withstand tests. You don't believe me? If you don't believe me, you can send a beauty over and I'll show you. Now, the Marquis of Savoy was very clear about the consequences of getting two people drunk and then sending them to the same bed. As a legendary master, he was very clear about the physique of a legendary master. Even if they were drunk, they would at most wake up in 1 or 2 hours. When a hot-blooded young man and a young and beautiful girl who had no strength to resist appeared on the same bed, what would happen in the end? Let's not talk about it anymore. I just want to say that I understand what you know and I won't explain what you don't know. After all, it's fine as long as you know. As for the drunken sex, I can tell you seriously and responsibly that it's all bullshit. The premise of drunken sex is that he isn't drunk at all. Alcohol is just an excuse. If he was really drunk, he would have already become a pile of dead people. How could he have messed up sex? As one of the chosen Marquis of the Kingdom of Florence, the Marquis of Savoy was very clear that his current position was very dangerous. For the sake of the family's future, he personally directed today's matter. In Sullen's words, his path was broadened. At this point, Su Len naturally would not refuse, so the next morning, the Marquis of Savoy saw the energetic Su Len and the shy and limping Sandy. Then, the nobles of the entire Sanfilto city knew that Su Len had a new consort. When Su Len returned to the northern city from Sanfilto city, it was already the season when the snow and ice melted. During this period of time, he had been handling matters in Sanfilto city. With the large amount of information collected by the brocade guards, Su Len made some appointments and adjustments to the officials in various places. The first batch of students in the school in Sanfilto city had been trained. After 4 months of learning, these students were now beginning to be assigned to various places by Su Len to serve as grassroots officials. Of course, these people also had to go to prison to receive ideological education before they left. During this period of time, the brocade guards had been quietly expanding. Now, the brocade guards had been building strongholds in most of the cities in the north. At the same time, the construction of the Eagle's Nest had been closely followed by the brocade guards. An intelligence network that could cover the entire kingdom of Florence was gradually taking shape. Of course, the cost of building this intelligence network was also very high. A large sum of money was needed every month to build this network. This time, a large amount of money had just been obtained from the battlefield, and a considerable part of it had been invested in this. Walking out of the astrology platform, Su Len was about to go see the apprentices in the Wizard Tower. However, he was surprised to see Onyxvia and Hathaway walking out together. The two were still discussing what to eat tonight. A wizard who wanted to study dragons and make friends with a dragon? This seemed to be a bit wrong. After thinking for a while, Sulen asked Chrissy about the daily activities of the little red dragon during this period of time. Onyx Via was very obedient after coming to the wizard tower. She found that there were too many big bosses here. In the past, she had the guts to wait until she was strong enough to whip Sulen, but she quickly gave up this dangerous idea. Sulen was really too strong. He was an advanced legendary and also had a wizard tower. Even if she was an adult, she would still be far from being able to compete with Sulen. Only when she was an ancient dragon would she have the chance to compete with Sulen. However, the gap between a young dragon and an ancient dragon spanned several years, and the gap spanned thousands of years. If Sulen was still alive after such a long time, then how strong would he be? She lived until she was strong enough, but Sulen might have died of old age. Even if she was strong enough, she would not be able to take revenge. Therefore, after knowing the truth, Onyx Via gave up. Then she returned to her daily life as a dragon. Every day, she slept on the Golden Mountain in the treasure room. When she had nothing to do, she would walk around the wizard tower or sneak into the kitchen to eat. Later, when Hathaway wanted to study dragons, she told her that as long as she learned spells, she could speed up her growth. Onyx Via was tempted. Dragons were long-lived creatures, and they also hoped to become stronger. Therefore, Onyx Via agreed to cooperate with Hathaway to do some experiments, and then Hathaway would teach her all kinds of spells. "Master, you're back." Seeing Sulen come over, the little red dragon's body stiffened, then it immediately recovered and said carefully, "Looks like you've had a good time." Sulen looked at the little red dragon and smiled. "Sulen, Phyllis didn't come back with you?" Hathaway glanced back and asked. "No, she's now the queen of the kingdom of Florence. When I'm not around, she needs to be there." Sulen shook his head. "I see. I wanted to study the blood connection between dragon wizards and dragons," Hathaway said, a little disappointed. "Oh, did you find something new?" Sulen asked. Hathaway shook her head. "I have some ideas, but they're not mature yet. Isn't Phyllis's blood density a little low? I want to try to strengthen her a little. When she comes, you can talk to her. I think she'll agree." Master," the little red dragon said hesitantly. Sulen looked at her and said, "What's wrong?" "I heard you built a volcano here. Can I move there?" The little red dragon said weakly. "Move to a volcano?" Sulen paused for a moment, then understood. Red dragons like to live in warm mountains. It would be even better if they lived in a volcanic environment. "If you live in a volcano, do I have to move my gold to the volcano and build a lava hot spring for you?" Sulen said, glancing at the little red dragon. "Really?" The little red dragon's eyes lit up. "Pa." Sulen reached out and knocked the little red dragon's head, and then said angrily, "In your dreams. Lava hot spring? If there's lava, why don't I use it to make obsidian? Why make it a hot spring for you? I caught you to be my mount, not for you to enjoy." "Oh." The little red dragon hugged its head with both hands and said dejectedly. Seeing the little red dragon's expression, Sulen smiled and said, "Although you can't live in a volcano, it's not impossible to modify your environment. I can create a temperature array for the place where you live, and adjust the temperature there to be close to the temperature of the volcano." "Really? That's great." Onyx Via shouted happily. "Of course. When the time comes, I'll give you the remote control for the temperature control. You can choose to adjust the temperature as high or low as you want." Sulen smiled. He was very democratic when it came to this. "By the way, remember to collect the scales that you shed and don't throw them away." Sulen suddenly said, "Those scales are not very hard, but they're good for making dragon scale armor." Dragons and snakes were somewhat similar. Their scales would fade as they grew. Of course, sometimes in battle, their scales would be destroyed, but after a period of time, they would grow new scales. The scales shed when a dragon was young had low defense. Other than making some potions, they were not very valuable. The scales that were shed when a dragon was young were valuable. Chapter 485. The dragon scales shed by the giant dragons also had the power of the giant dragons. The giant dragons often rewarded their slaves with these scales. They used a spell to embed these dragon scales on their slaves, which could create some dragonkin kobolds, dragonkin orcs, and so on. There were still some differences between these dragonkin and the real dragonkin. The dragonkin transformed by embellishing scales on their bodies had low heritability, and their strength was also weaker. This kind of dragonkin transformation would improve the user's physical fitness in all aspects. Of course, this method consumed less energy, and the number of dragonkin that could be transformed was also higher. In fact, many dragonkin creatures were not the offspring of giant dragons and other creatures. Of course, a considerable number of dragonkin creatures that were almost all over the multiverse were indeed the descendants of giant dragons. The giant dragons had a special radiation ability around their bodies. This radiation was not destructive, but it could subtly dragonize other creatures. Living in this environment for a long time, the body would even show some dragonization reactions, such as growing some small scales like dragon scales, and so on. Sulen and Hathaway came to the treasury together and made a temperature control array for the little red dragon's sleeping place. At the same time, they strictly limited the area to ensure that it would not affect other places. The energy of this temperature control array was also provided by the elemental pool. Now the elemental pool of the entire wizard tower was still full of energy. The elemental pool that Hathaway originally designed could be used to upgrade the wizard tower into a floating space tower. Of course, this elemental pool could only maintain the floating space tower's flight for a period of time. To truly become a floating space tower, the elemental furnace technology was still needed. After making the temperature control array for Onyx Via, Sulen and Hathaway returned to the palace together. At this time, Alex also returned from the Eagle Fortress. During this period of time, she had been paying attention to her people. After this period of upgrading, several more harpies had successfully transformed into winged people. After seeing Alex, Sulen pulled Alex together. That night, Sulen stayed in the palace and gave Hathaway and Alex a checkup. So far, Hathaway's body had improved a little, but she was still no match for Sulen. During this time, her bloodline awakening was very stable. As her strength increased, her bloodline would awaken bit by bit. Although this bloodline power gave her great power, it was also a kind of restraint. Luckily, she was a wizard. When the bloodline potential was exhausted, she could still rely on the power of a wizard to continue to increase her strength. Among Sullen's wives, the most powerful one was Hathaway, followed by the little succubus Chris and Alex. Their strength was about the same, followed by Phyllis. As for Sandy, she was just an ordinary person. In fact, even Phyllis was just an ordinary person before. She only became a warlock because of Sullen's dragon blood potion. However, compared to Alex, Phyllis's bloodline potential was far inferior. Phyllis had only implanted a small amount of bloodline, so her awakening and potential were much lower. However, she was much stronger than before. When they were in Sanfilto City, Sulen would take Phyllis to do exercises every night to improve her physical fitness and speed up her awakening. After this period of consistent exercise, Phyllis's physical fitness had been greatly improved. This was something that Sulen had personally verified. What the dragon bloodline brought to her was not only the improvement of her physical fitness, but also the ability to protect herself. With the advantage of her physical fitness and Sullen's swordsmanship, Phyllis could easily defeat many warriors. The thrilling battle was over, and a new day had begun. Sulen was drawing a blueprint at his desk. The terrain of the northern city was troublesome, so he was thinking about the layout of the floating city in the future. Although the floating city was built with the northern city as the core, it was impossible to raise the entire city into the sky. After the northern city had been expanded several times, the outer city wall was 8 kilometers long. Coupled with the surrounding farmland, the area had reached dozens of square kilometers. Such an area could be regarded as a medium-sized floating city. Sullen's current planned area was only part of the city. After the separation in the future, a huge pit would be formed in the inner city of the northern city. He was ready to renovate it. If the elemental furnace was built successfully, it would not be too difficult to raise a small floating city. In the era of the Arcane Empire, the area of a large floating city was more than 50 square kilometers. That kind of large floating city used several mice energy nuclei arranged in a special way to form an energy matrix, and then the behemoth was raised. Sulen naturally did not have such powerful technology. To build such a large floating city, Sulen had to go one step further after mastering the elemental fusion furnace and obtain the elemental annihilation furnace. Elemental annihilation was a technology that not many people in the era of the Arcane Empire knew about. It was said that this technology had not been developed and was still a conjecture. Of course, no one knew the specific situation now. However, Sulen did not have any information about the elemental annihilation technology, so it was impossible to talk about it. There was a light sound of footsteps, and then the door of the study opened. Chris's figure appeared in the room. She was wearing a black bodysuit with hollowed-out patterns today, showing off her curves incisively and vividly. The figure of a succubus was very exaggerated. Her breasts were high, her hips were round, and her waist was slender. It was a perfect figure, and because of her race, the body of a succubus was very soft. This flexibility was far beyond that of humans, so they could easily perform many positions that humans could not. At the same time, they could also use some offensive methods that humans could not use in battle. Sulen had prepared a large number of materials for Chris and asked Hathaway to make equipment for her. The black leather coat she was wearing now was one of them. He had made a total of 5 of these coats using the toughest and softest leather from Hydra. According to standards, they were high-grade magic items and were only a little bit away from being Tier 4 magic items. These leather armors were very soft and did not affect Chris's agility at all. Moreover, their defense was very good. Sulen had accumulated a large number of materials and asked Hathaway to make them. Many of the equipment Sulen and the others were using were made by her. Master. Chris was like a beautiful snake as she wrapped herself around Sulen. Did you miss me? Slap. Sulen slapped Chris's perky butt, which was like a full moon. The sound was crisp and pleasant. Her butt shook slightly, and the elasticity was very good. Behave, now again. I'll deal with you tonight. A small flame rose in Sulen's heart, but he forced it down. Chris pouted and pressed his head hard against her body, letting him have a taste of suffocation. Only then did she get up. Master, is there something you need from me? I've prepared new equipment for you. Sulen took a deep breath. The suffocating feeling just now was too strong. New equipment? For me? Chris's eyes lit up at the mention of new equipment. Of course it's for you. Sulen rubbed her head. Let's go. Soon, Sulen brought Chris to a room. There were many stone platforms in this room. These platforms had been sealed by magic barriers, and pieces of equipment were floating on the platforms. Sulen took her to a stone platform and gently inputted a magic password on the stone platform. The protective barrier on the surface of the stone platform disappeared, and a piece of equipment appeared in front of them. This weapon is called Poison Fang. It's the strongest and sharpest tooth I took from the Hydra's head when I killed it last time. It has armor-piercing, anti-magic, sharpness, poison, and paralysis effects. Try it and see how it works. Sulen took the dagger and handed it to Chris. Other than using a whip, Chris also used a dagger. Her dagger energy was very strong. Chris grabbed the dagger with one hand and did all kinds of fancy things with the other. She was very familiar with the dagger. Very good. That's good. Hathaway turned around and took a delicately made belt. This is the Giant's Belt of Strength. After wearing it, your strength will increase greatly. You need to get used to it in advance. Hathaway made 2 Giant's Belt of Strength. They were made from the body materials of the Frost Giant Chief and the Swamp Giant Chief. The 2 Giants' Belt of Strength were basically the same. The only difference was the color of the belt. The Frost Giant's belt was blue, and the Swamp Giant's belt was yellow. This kind of giant's belt of strength had very few uses. Its purpose was to increase strength. It could give the wearer the strength of a frost giant or a swamp giant. The best belt of strength in the material plane was the Frost Giant King's belt. It was said to be made from the skin of a frost giant king. It could increase the wearer's strength by 8, and the highest was 35. The two belts made by Hathaway could increase the wearer's strength by 4, and the highest was 30. There were restrictions on relying on external forces to increase the body's attributes. For example, attributes added by equipment, such as strength, could not be stacked and had a limit. The second kind was the increase in strength from spells. At the same time, the attributes added by spells could not be stacked and would be covered. The third kind was the eruption of the body's potential. The most common was Berserk. The attributes in these 3 states could be stacked. Chris took the belt and put it on. As she put it on, her whole body immediately surged with a heat full of power. Chapter 486. How do you feel? Sulen asked with a smile. My body is full of power. I think I can punch through the wall here. Chrissy said eagerly. Do you want to give it a try? Sulen said, looking at Chrissy with a teasing smile. However, Chrissy didn't notice at all. She nodded and agreed. Sulen took Chrissy to the training ground of the Wizard Tower, and then the two stood in the middle of the training ground. Chrissy was a warlock and a part-time assassin. As soon as she stood still, she attacked. With a flash of cold light, a dagger appeared in front of Sulen. Sulen blocked it with his long sword. Although he was not an assassin, Sulen's agility attribute was much higher than Chrissy's. The battle between the two was very fast. In the eyes of others, there were afterimages quickly appearing on the battlefield, and only when they collided did sparks burst out. Chris surrounded Sulen and kept attacking. Every attack she made was aimed at Sulen's fatal points, which made people tremble with fear. Bang! Sulen blocked Chrissy's attack again. The cold light on the dagger was less than a centimeter away from Sulen's throat. However, a huge force came from the dagger, and Chrissy's body flew backward at an even faster speed. She then smashed into the wall beside her. Ouch! It hurts. I'm done, Chris said as she rubbed her aching back. I'm an assassin, but my dexterity isn't as high as yours. Moreover, your strength is more than 1 level lower. Why should I torture myself? Chrissy sat on the ground with a depressed expression. Sulen smiled and walked over to help her up. Now that you have the strength belt, your strength has reached the standard of an ordinary frost giant. You're much stronger than other assassins, Sulen said with a smile. The best strength belt was made from the skin of a frost giant king or a cloud giant king. It allowed the wearer to have the strength of a frost giant chieftain. I've also prepared other equipment for you. More equipment? Hearing Sulen's words, Chris's eyes lit up. She grabbed Sulen's hand and got up from the ground. Let me see what kind of equipment it is. Let's go. Sulen pulled Chris back to the lab. This is a mind headdress. It can add a mind shield to prevent you from being controlled by mind control spells. Prerequisites: will immunity to some mind control spells and mind attack spells. Sulen handed a beautiful gemstone headband to Chris. The gemstones used in the headband were actually the eyes of the brain hunters. The brain hunter's eyes had the same special psionic ability as the beholder. After soaking in a specially concocted potion, the brain hunter's eyes would become very hard, as beautiful as the best cat's eye gems. Gale boots. It comes with advanced haste, fly, featherfall, and auto-recharge. You should be able to use it. The Gale boots were made of cryopterous leather. The wind element on it was rich, and with the runes inscribed with mithril, it was already a quasi-legendary level magic equipment. Agility gem. It can strengthen your agility perception. It will be effective as long as you wear it. Sulen handed a gem to Chris. In addition to the agility gem, Hathaway also made strength gems, physique gems, mind gems, and charm gems. These gems required high-quality magic gems as the main material, and many rare materials were added. Only one of these gems could be worn at a time, and the effect was not bad. It could increase the corresponding attributes by 3 points. These attribute gems could only be worn one at a time, and the attributes increased by the gem could be stacked with other equipment. If you wanted to change it, you would have to take it off and exchange it. In fact, these attribute gems were only the primary products of another type of gem, the Philosopher's Stone. The Philosopher's Stone, this gem required 5 high-quality attribute gems and other materials to synthesize. After success, you would get a Philosopher's Stone. The success rate of the Philosopher's Stone was very low, but after success, the Philosopher's Stone would increase all attributes by 3 points. It was a pity that Hathaway hadn't made it yet. Shadow Cloak, with a high-level invisibility spell. It can strengthen stealth and shadow at the same time. It can summon a mirror image. The mirror image is exactly the same as the original, but the damage is only 1/5 of the original. The mirror image's defense is also 1/5 of the original. It was a very good cannon fodder to attract the enemy's attention or to cover an attack or retreat. If used well, it was not difficult to change the outcome of a battle. Protection Ring, this is made based on the ring I used to wear. After activation, a high-level energy protection force field will appear. Anti-Magic Ring. After wearing it, it can increase magic resistance. It is very valuable against wizards. Beside him, Chris was dazzled, her face full of shock. This set of equipment was simply too luxurious. Any one of these equipment in front of her would be sold for hundreds of thousands or even millions of kinnar. With so many of them added up, it was a few million kinnar. Chris had become a moving treasure trove. The main materials for these equipment were obtained by Su Len from killing various monsters and monsters. After Hathaway's crafting, they became powerful magic equipment. As a member of the Chinese family in his previous life, Su Len had also inherited the fine traditions of the Chinese family. For example, he was obsessed with the construction of cities, roads, and other infrastructures. For example, Su Len was like a squirrel in winter, hoarding large amounts of wealth. These things in front of her were accumulated bit by bit. When he was playing games, Su Len liked to accumulate large amounts of materials and gems. Then he would upgrade his equipment every once in a while. After giving all the equipment to Chris, Su Len went to find Alex. Alex was flipping through books in the library. When he saw Su Len coming, he put down the book and said, "How come you have time to come here today?" Su Len stepped forward and grabbed Alex's arm. "Come with me, I have something for you." Su Len pulled Alex to the lab. In the lab, as soon as Alex entered, he was attracted by a luxurious mage robe. The appearance of the equipment made by Hathaway was basically designed by Su Len. Su Len combined the various patterns he had seen in his previous life. After some deletions or direct plagiarism, the pattern was much better than the original pattern in this world. Of course, some impractical patterns were also deleted by Su Len. This is the Starry Sky robe. The main material is the skin of the Hydra. It's made from the softest skin of the Hydra's abdomen. The gold and silver threads on it are made from adamantine and mithril. Although the skin of the Hydra's abdomen is not as tough as the other parts, it's still tougher than normal fur. The softness is also very suitable. It's a good material for inner armor or wizard robes. The wizard robe in front of Alex was in the style of a windbreaker. It was very luxurious, and the tall Alex looked very beautiful in it. Is it beautiful? It's so beautiful. Alex stared at the wizard robe in front of him without blinking. Try it on. Su Len smiled. Okay. Alex did not refuse. He stepped forward and put on the wizard robe. This wizard robe is called the Starry Sky robe. It comes with spell maximization and mana reconstruction, metamagic abilities. At the same time, it can greatly increase your mana recovery speed. Magic resistance is 25. There are also advanced chain of accidents and spell sequences on it. It can increase the casting speed, reduce the casting difficulty, and shorten the casting time. Many spells that would take you a second or 2 to 3 seconds to cast will take a lot less time with this Starry Sky magic robe. Some spells can even be cast instantly. Chain of accidents and spell sequences will need to be input and set by you. When the time comes, you just need to prepare according to your fighting style. The wizard robe also comes with flash spells, advanced invisibility spells, flight spells, advanced mage armor, and advanced energy defensive force field. There's also the life-saving spell, Banish. Banish was a spell that did not have any attacking power. The only use of this spell was to instantly send an object into a different dimension. In this different dimension, the object would not be able to move, and at the same time, it would not be able to be attacked. It would only come out of the different dimension when the time came. This Banish was very similar to the Time Dragon's Time Banish. It was said that this spell was made to imitate the Time Dragon's Time Banish. Time Banish, the Time Dragon's innate ability. It can directly throw the enemy out of time. The creature will completely disappear and be unable to move. Of course, others will not be able to attack it until its existence is recaptured by time. In other words, it will appear in the near future. During this process, the existence of the opponent can be said to have completely disappeared. During this time, everything about the subject will be stopped, and even their thoughts will be stagnant. Of course, Banish was not so powerful. It could only send the person into a different dimension for a period of time. It would not stop their thoughts. The duration was 30 seconds. It could be used to escape or trap the enemy. What do you think? That's great, Alex said happily. The robe is beautiful. The spells on it are also great. As long as you like it. Sulen shrugged. Here's something for you. Look at this staff. Sulen took out a staff. Suluan had used a branch of a nature oak tree for this staff, and had carved a large number of magic patterns on it. This staff could store a level 8 spell, a level 7 spell, and 2 level 6 spells. At the same time, it could reduce the casting difficulty and mana consumption. It was blessed with the metamagic ability, Spell Penetration. Chapter 487. Sulen was busy preparing equipment for Chris and Alex to enhance their strength, and Hathaway was no exception. Compared to Chris and Alex's equipment, Hathaway's equipment was more powerful. Alex's Starry Sky robe was actually a simplified version of Hathaway's Sage Robe of Wisdom. Not only did it have all the power of the Starry Sky robe, but it also had many supreme magic skills that were at the legend level. As for the magic staff, the nature oak was now in its growth stage, and its branches could not be used to make legendary magic staffs. Originally, the Hydra's spine could be used to make legendary magic staffs, but this kind of spine material was more suitable for necromancy and voodoo spells. It was not suitable for Hathaway's prophecy, incantation, and evocation spells. Ordinary magic staffs had almost no effect on Hathaway. Hathaway's magic staff was still the one she made before, and its effect on her could only be said to be better than nothing. Northern Wilderness, Ruins Valley, Kobold Camp. Under Sullen's deliberate indulgence, this kobold camp already had more than 2,000 kobolds and goblins. These monsters were now all believers of the evil god of the Heartless. After more than half a year of development, this place had become the evil god of the Heartless headquarters. This fruit had now matured, and Sulen was ready to harvest it. The ice and snow had melted, and Sulen set off with an army from the northern battlefront city, accompanied by Chris and Alex. As for Hathaway, she still stayed in the wizard tower to cooperate with them. These slender rogues quickly disappeared in front of people's eyes. "Sir, there are no enemies. We have arrived at the predetermined location. Hide here. From now on, you can only enter and not leave," Sulen said coldly. Ever since the kobolds were allowed to live in the valley, Sulen had never relaxed his surveillance of them. A large number of harpies were keeping a close eye on the valley. Because of the arrival of winter, all the kobolds who were out had returned to the valley to spend the winter. The valley was surrounded by mountains on 3 sides, and there was only one exit. The mountains blocked the cold wind, so the winter here wasn't too cold. Moreover, there was a spring in the valley, and there was land for farming. It could be said that as long as the entrance was sealed, it would be a paradise. Of course, the space in this valley was limited. It could only accommodate 2,000 to 3,000 people at most. Sulen came to the outskirts of the valley and looked at the kobolds who were preparing for the ritual. He didn't bring a lot of soldiers with him this time. There were only 300 of them, but they weren't weak at all. There were 100 half-elf archers, 100 barbarian warriors, and 100 spear guards. After 3 years of development, Sulen's current guards had already been replaced by the formation breaker. The number of people in the formation breaker had officially broken through 50, and the shooting sound battalion was not inferior, reaching 40 people. These guards weren't here to protect Sulen, but to protect the palace. The valley below was already occupied by the kobolds. After a few months of development, these kobolds had built all kinds of defenses here. Although the normal kobolds weren't very intelligent, the kobold warlocks were still very intelligent. At least, they weren't worse than normal people. After seeing this kobold tribe, Sulen was surprised to find that there were at least 12 kobold warlocks in this tribe. It must be known that in the northern wilderness, only one kobold warlock could awaken in a kobold tribe with over 1,000 people. In this kobold tribe with only 2,000 people, there were 12 spellcasters. This probability was higher than the human world. In addition to the kobold warlocks, there were at least 3 teams of dragon blood kobolds. One team had 36 kobolds, and 3 teams had 108 kobolds. A village of this size could be considered a medium-sized tribe in the northern wilderness. The equipment of these kobolds was somewhat crude. They wore dirty leather armor and held metal weapons in their hands. Kobolds knew how to smelt metal, but due to technical problems, the metal they smelted had a lot of impurities, and the weapons they made were much worse. Sulen was very clear that this was definitely the work of the evil god. Normal kobolds were classified as level 1, but their strength didn't reach level 1. According to the system's rating, a farmer with simple training was only level 1. Such a farmer only needed to be calm and collected to deal with 3 kobolds. The dragon blood kobold strength wasn't something normal kobolds could compare to. The profession level of a dragon blood kobold was level 7. This was already stronger than a knight. As for the kobold warlocks, their strength was at least level 2. Most kobold warlocks had mastered the fireball spell. This spell wasn't trash, but in fact, the destructive power of the fireball spell was very strong. This spell was basically comparable to the power of a small caliber cannon. In the valley in front of them, the kobolds used trees, rocks, and mud to build a crude wall to seal off the entrance of the valley. There was also a team of kobold guards on the wall. In the valley, there was a messy village. A stream flowed outside the village, and there were some cultivated farmlands nearby. However, the farming techniques were terrible, and the farmlands looked more like graffiti. However, in terms of civilization, the kobold village in front of them was much more advanced than the kobolds in the northern wilderness. The kobolds here looked like they were living in a slave society. Rough mud walls were erected around the village. They were nearly half a meter thick and were made of stones and mud. Behind the mud walls were low thatched huts and mud enclosures. There were also many slaves working outside the village. If it wasn't for the fact that it looked too simple and crude, this was completely a town. They're learning really fast. Seeing the scene in the valley, Sulen couldn't help but sigh. These kobolds and goblins that escaped from the northern city might have only learned a little, but under the power of the evil god, they started to develop a civilization. Since when did the evil god start to develop believers? Or was he preparing to transform into a true god? Although Sulen didn't know what the evil god was planning, he could tell that he was planning something big. Woo woo woo. A low bugle horn sounded from the village, followed by a series of noisy shouts. Accompanied by the kobold's clumsy draconic language, it sounded like thousands of dogs barking at the same time. It was very irritating to listen to. In the center of the village, a group of priests wearing strange masks stood on an altar. The stones on the altar were a strange dark red, as if they were soaked in blood. The kobolds around them looked very fanatical, and there was a kind of sick madness in their eyes. Then, under the escort of a team of strong dragon blood kobold warriors, a group of captives was dragged out. What surprised Sulen was that there were not only goblins and kobolds among the captives, but also jackalans and orcs. These slaves were covered in ugly scars, and their eyes were numb. There was no sign of life. Woof. Woof woof. A series of broken dragon language sounded. It was the kobold priests praising the evil god. When the leading priest raised his hand, the noisy scene instantly quieted down. Then, there was another shout. The black mass of people all knelt on the ground, and then started to chant under the guidance of the priest. The entire ritual site was in a frenzy. The kobolds and goblins' eyes were all red as they screamed hysterically. Their loud voices reverberated throughout the valley, and the birds and beasts in the surrounding forest were also frightened by this sound. Woof woof. A cruel smile appeared on the leading kobold priest's face. He held an obsidian dagger in his hand and came to the first captive. With a flash of cold light, the sharp dagger directly pierced the captive's chest. The captive opened his eyes wide and wanted to struggle, but he was held down by the dragon blood kobold next to him. The priest did not stop. Instead, he cut horizontally with the dagger, opening a large hole in the captive's chest. Blood gushed out, and a bright red beating heart appeared in front of him. The kobold priest grabbed the beating heart, and the obsidian dagger in his hand flashed with cold light, and he instantly cut it off. Hot blood gushed out of the captive's veins, but the kobold priest did not care. The blood flowed along the rocks and onto the altar. The priest held the heart in one hand and the dagger in the other, and he walked to the center of the altar with a very sincere expression. He then carefully placed the heart on the dark red stone platform. As the blood flowed out, a strange evil energy also appeared. The kobold believers all had frenzied, intoxicated, and excited expressions on their faces. Suluan quietly watched the group of kobolds perform the blood sacrifice. Obviously, these dogs couldn't change their habit of eating shit. The evil god of the Heartless still liked blood sacrifices. After all, blood sacrifices were the easiest way to obtain divine power. Otherwise, in ancient times, almost all the gods would have accepted the blood sacrifice. However, this blood sacrifice had a lot of side effects, which made the gods fearful. In the end, they had to give up on this ritual. Otherwise, this method of sacrifice would not have been abandoned. Relying on the conscience of the gods? In the past, many true gods went crazy because of blood sacrifices. They attacked everywhere and were eventually surrounded and killed by other gods. In the end, the gods gave up on this ritual. Looking at the dark red bloodstains on the altar, this kind of sacrificial ceremony had been held countless times. In fact, this kind of blood sacrifice was not conducive to the development of believers. Although the normal development of believers seemed to take a long time and the effect was slow, this kind of method was sustainable. In the long run, this kind of method was far more beneficial than blood sacrifice. Chapter 488. The specialty of a blood sacrifice was that it took only a short time and had a quick effect. The gods naturally liked this method. As for the other method that had a better long-term effect, they could not see that far ahead. Don't overestimate the knowledge of the gods. In fact, most of the gods were short-sighted. Soon, the second captive was dragged out. A blood sacrifice was not enough to satisfy the evil god. In ancient times, there were often blood sacrifices of thousands of people. There were even a few blood sacrifices of tens of thousands of people. As an evil god, the Heartless would not be satisfied so easily. As time passed, the scale of the blood sacrifice would only increase. One day, the believers would not be able to bear it. If the blood sacrifice could not provide powerful sacrifices, then they would have to rely on sufficient numbers to please the evil god. Therefore, a blood sacrifice would often last for a long time. Through this blood sacrifice, the believers would be able to obtain the god's blessing. The quality of the sacrifices provided by the kobolds was not high, so they could only rely on numbers to make up for it. The sun gradually set, and the light in the valley became even dimmer. Pine oil torches were lit, and the priests began to dig out the hearts of the captives. Soon, all the captives were killed, but the evil gods seemed to be dissatisfied with the sacrifices. The entire altar was shrouded in an eerie and terrifying aura. The invisible pressure made the kobolds tremble. The evil god was not an obedient child. If they could not satisfy the evil god's request, the evil god would do it himself. A cold glint flashed across the eyes of the leading priest. He then ordered in a deep voice. A few strong dragon-blooded kobolds rushed to the back of the crowd and grabbed some disabled kobolds and goblins. The captured kobolds and goblins screamed in horror and tried to escape, but everyone lowered their heads and ignored them. As the obsidian dagger slashed across, a kobold's chest was directly torn apart. His steaming heart was dug out. Scarlet blood spurted out and slowly flowed into the crevices of the rocks on the altar. As the heart was placed on the altar, the evil god's consciousness showed a trace of satisfaction. Then, it kept urging the sacrifice to continue. Seeing this, the kobold priest inwardly let out a sigh of relief before killing the other kobold. At the same time, the faces of the kobolds and gnomes kneeling before the altar were once again filled with fervent excitement. The kobold priest could feel the power within his body growing, and his heart was filled with joy. After every blood sacrifice, his strength would increase. This was a gift from the gods, and as long as he continued to sacrifice, he would become even more powerful. Above the altar, a blood-red spirit light enveloped the entire valley. This spirit light was emitted by the evil god. At this time, the sacrifice had reached its climax. The air was filled with the pungent smell of blood. Even Sulen could smell it in the air. "Do it," Sulen ordered coldly. "Alex, have the harpies seal off the battlefield. Don't let any living creature escape." "Yes, master." Alex gently flapped her wings, and a wave of energy spread out from her body. Soon, 3,000 harpies descended from the sky and surrounded the valley. "Chris, don't leave anyone alive in this battle." "Yes, master." The little succubus Chris's tall figure stepped forward and responded. Then, a group of demons behind her spread their wings and flew towards the valley in a flash. The northern battlefront city's army, which had already been prepared, began to move. Arrows rained down from the earth walls at the entrance of the valley. The kobolds patrolling the area were shot into hedgehogs before they could even react. The leading kobold with dragon blood was the focus of attention. At least 20 arrows pierced through its 2-meter-tall body. Blood flowed everywhere, and this kobold with dragon blood fell to the ground dead before he could even make a sound. The barbarian warriors covered in armor all roared and charged forward with their giant axes. These barbarians directly activated charge and rushed towards the earth walls at the entrance of the valley like tanks. Then, they jumped and smashed through the gate. The stronger ones even smashed through the walls made of stone, wood, and clay. The first line of defense built by the kobolds only lasted for a minute before it was completely destroyed. Frantic shouts came from the valley, and the sound of the collision startled the kobolds who were in the middle of the sacrificial ritual. The evil god Heartless also sensed something, and it roared furiously. Then, all the kobolds turned their heads to look. In the next second, the kobolds also roared furiously, grabbed their weapons, and rushed toward the entrance of the valley. Pang pang pang. As the sound of bowstrings rang out, sharp arrows fell from the sky, instantly pinning the charging kobold gnomes to the ground. Blood flowed everywhere. Spinning slash. Blood and flesh flew everywhere, and colorful organs fell everywhere. The blood made the barbarian warriors even more excited. Many of the barbarian warriors' eyes were bloodshot, and they directly activated Berserk. Their already tall bodies grew even taller, and the axes in their hands were like wheat being reaped. They killed all the kobolds and goblins that rushed up. Teams of spear guards followed closely behind. These spear guards wore fine iron armor and held spears in their hands. They lined up in a neat formation and pushed forward uniformly. After the kobolds and goblins collided with the spear guards, it was like a tide crashing into a reef. Bright red blood splashed like waves, and the enemies were directly stabbed to death in front of the spear formation. Lightning spear. A bolt of lightning appeared in Sullen's hand, and then a bright bolt of lightning was thrown out by Sulen. The lightning instantly hit the kobold priest on the altar. The powerful lightning power instantly hit the priest's chest, and a bowl-sized hole appeared in his chest. The powerful lightning power turned the area around the wound into a pile of charcoal. These kobold wizards were also priests, so who knew if they had some strange spells? So Sulen took care of these people first. Lightning flashed, and then a few more bolts of lightning shot out. The dozen priests around the altar were just about to attack, but they were all covered by the lightning. A series of crackling sounds came, and these kobold priests were directly turned into piles of charcoal. Their corpses fell down one by one, and blood kept flowing out. The blood then seeped into the altar. There were sounds of killing all around, and kobolds and goblins were killed one after another. Because Sulen gave the order to kill, these people did not plan to take any prisoners. Everywhere they went, there was a rain of blood. Blood sprayed on the ground, and then slowly flowed under the influence of a strange power. The blood slowly gathered towards the altar as if it had a life of its own. Fortunately, the battlefield was in chaos, and no one noticed this problem. Hundreds and thousands of people died, and a large amount of blood gathered. The air was filled with the thick smell of blood. Nimble half-elven archers nimbly jumped onto the roofs and shot at the enemies. Quick, take the high ground. Archers, focus on suppressing the enemies. Break their formation, don't give them a chance to regroup. Waves of shouts sounded, and arrows rained down. The kobolds that were just about to gather into a formation were once again heavily injured. The half-elven archers shot very quickly. One of the older half-elves held 6 arrows in one hand, and in a short 2 seconds, he shot out 7 or 8 arrows in one breath. The kobolds that he aimed at fell one by one. One of the dragon-blood dog-headed men roared and grabbed a heavy metal shield and charged forward, wanting to get close to the archers. This powerful dragon-blood kobold was very fast. The archers immediately focused their fire on it. However, this dragon-blood kobold's reaction was very fast, and the shield in its hand was very large. It easily blocked those arrows. With the protection of the other kobolds, this dragon-blood kobold was very fast. Seeing that it was less than 10 meters away from the archers, the older half-elven archer's eyes narrowed, and his gaze became as sharp as an eagle's. Then, a scorching energy shot out from his bow. Flame arrow. Boom! The flame arrow was like a cannonball that flew over in an instant, and then directly hit the dragon-blood kobold. The shield in the kobold's hand was instantly blown to pieces, and the high temperature directly melted the metal shield. The kobold hiding behind the shield was directly blown away, and his entire body turned into a ball of fire. After the death of this kobold, the morale of the kobolds in the surroundings collapsed, and they turned to run. The battlefield was completely one-sided, and the kobolds and goblins suffered heavy casualties. Large amounts of blood gathered on the altar, and the evil energy on the altar became stronger and stronger. Now that the battle had reached this stage, the kobolds had long since collapsed. Many kobolds wanted to surrender, but they were immediately killed. Seeing this, the remaining kobolds started to run. However, there was only one exit in the valley, and they had nowhere to run. As the kobolds suffered heavy casualties, the evil energy quickly grew, and an evil spirit chi spread out from the altar. The evil spirit chi swept out, and in Sullen's eyes, the souls of the kobolds that had been killed were sucked in, and a shocking power quickly gathered. A powerful energy fluctuation appeared, and this energy tore through space, and a black shadow forcibly squeezed in. As the black shadow appeared, the blood on the altar instantly fused into the black shadow's body. Chapter 489. Boom! Soul energy surged, and a large amount of blood gathered. The original altar suddenly shattered, and a tall figure appeared there. Everyone, retreat to the exit of the valley immediately. Sulen immediately said after seeing the bloody figure. The next battle is no longer something you can interfere with. At this time, Sulen had already descended from midair. Lightning flashed on his body, and the storm halberd appeared in his hand. Powerful lightning power filled the air, and lightning snakes flashed through the air. Thunderstorm skill. The dazzling lightning cut through the night sky, and a bolt of lightning as thick as a bucket fell from the sky, instantly hitting the bloody figure that was constantly churning. Blood splattered, and lightning shot in all directions. A large amount of blood evaporated, and a 3-meter-tall figure appeared in front of them. You deserve to die. A roar was heard, followed by a powerful evil energy that instantly burst out. Sulen felt his body sink. Ding, affected by blasphemy power, ding, affected by evil spirit energy, lightning surged, and Sulen's body was shrouded in a layer of lightning energy. Then, a powerful lightning power erupted from Sulen's body. Thunder domain. Endless lightning appeared in Sulen's eyes. At this time, Sulen was like the incarnation of lightning. Seeing the blood-red figure in front of him, Sulen didn't have to guess to know that it was the evil god known as the Heartless. Although it wasn't his real body, he had already injected most of his power into this incarnation. Gods were afraid of death, and very few gods would take the initiative to leave their divine kingdom with their true body. This evil god in front of him had put in a lot of effort this time. Although it was not his true body, the incarnation was not an ordinary incarnation. If this incarnation died, the evil god's strength would plummet, and he would suffer heavy losses. Seeing this incarnation, Sulen was not too surprised. After all, he had already prepared for this situation. As an evil god, although not a true god, his combat power was far beyond that of a legendary expert. Sulen speculated that this evil god's true body was much stronger than a demigod. The incarnation in front of him was also not to be underestimated. Lightning Spear. After activating the Thunder territory, the thunder power around Sulen became even stronger. A thunder spear filled with a destructive aura quickly formed in his hand. Sulen immediately threw out a lightning spear. However, Sulen's target wasn't the evil god's divine incarnation but the spatial portal that had been torn open. Amidst the thunderous roar, the heartless divine incarnation looked strangely at the collapsing portal. The lightning exploded, and even the altar below was destroyed by the lightning spear. Sulen wasn't going to leave the teleportation gate behind. What if this divine avatar escaped through the teleportation gate? Sui Xiong did not want to give up on the incarnation at the last moment and escape with the power of divinity. If that was the case, then all his efforts would be for naught. An angry roar sounded. Sulen directly destroyed the portal. The evil god's incarnation could not return unless he accumulated power again and started a new round of blood sacrifice. The wind raged. The angry evil god's incarnation was very fast. With a flash of red light, it had already appeared in front of Sulen. A blood tentacle instantly shot out. Sulen's storm battle halberd swept across and directly cut off the blood tentacle. However, something unexpected happened. The blood tentacle that was cut off quickly moved toward the main body and then merged back together. Regeneration? Or other abilities? Sulen frowned slightly. Or immunity to physical damage. Lightning Spear. The storm battle halberd was instantly wrapped in a layer of violent thunder power. With Sulen's attack, thunder and lightning clashed in the sky. Boom! The moment the two sides clashed, an extremely fierce battle broke out. Horrifying scars appeared on the evil god's incarnation's huge body, and the energy shield on the surface of Sulen's body shattered one after another. The evil god's incarnation's attack directly hit Sulen's body, but he blocked it with his spear. Thunder and blood made a fierce explosion, and the two were directly pushed away by the explosion. Revenge. 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 I'm going to eat you. The evil god's incarnation muttered. Sulen's ears were shrouded in chaos. Whispers kept ringing in his ears. These noisy voices seemed to ignore space and appeared directly in his mind, constantly disturbing his mind. Sulen frowned. He hated this kind of enemy. Not only was their vitality tenacious, but they were also very difficult to kill. They were either immune to physical damage or had super strong regenerative abilities. Blasphemy. In a strange silence, an inexplicable figure appeared and pierced Sulen's soul. Unfortunately, this kind of attack was useless. Sulen had a strong will to begin with, and he also had the iron will, talent ability. His own resistance was also high, and he was not afraid of this kind of control spell at all. Great Cleave. The evil god's follower rushed directly towards Sulen, and the evil energy kept corroding the surrounding space. Rumble. After realizing that magical attacks were useless against him, the evil god's incarnation directly used physical attacks. A giant sword condensed from flesh appeared in its hand. Sulen's body flashed and flew past from the side. Accompanied by the flash of thunder, Sulen's storm battle halberd fiercely cut a hideous wound on his body. A blood whip swept across. The blood whip had strong corrosive properties, and a layer of the rocks next to it was directly corroded. In a short while, the surrounding ground and rocks were full of traces of corrosion. There was also a layer of divine force field around the evil god's incarnation. Sulen was very clear about this and had already prepared for it. The storm battle halberd flashed with thunder and attacked quickly. The evil god's incarnation did not show any weakness. It fought speed with speed, and the whip shadows covered the surroundings tightly. The sky was filled with whip shadows that fell from the sky. Bang! 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 Sulen swept the evil god's incarnation away. Then, without any hesitation, he instantly chased after it. Chain Fireball. Spell Maximization. Flames rose up, and the evil god's incarnation was beaten to a pulp. Sulen did not stop at all. Fireball after fireball whizzed out. In the deafening explosion, the evil god's incarnation in front of him became smaller and smaller, and the energy layer on the surface of its body became shaky. The evil god's incarnation was originally an amalgamation of chaotic evil power. Later on, it received a large number of blood sacrifices, and its consciousness became even more chaotic and crazy. In the face of Sulen's attacks, it did not dodge at all. It directly rushed forward. With a flash of blood, it was already in front of Sulen. A scarlet shadow instantly attacked. Bang! Thunder exploded. Tentacles of blood instantly hit Sulen. These tentacles of blood attacked very quickly. In just a moment, Sulen was attacked hundreds of times. The thunder shield only lasted for 2 seconds before cracks appeared. Advanced Mage Armor. Advanced Energy Protective Barrier. Advanced Deflection Force Field Protection. Rays of spiritual light flashed across Sulen's body. The protective spells that he had prepared in advance were released in an instant. Invisible barriers opened up. The moment the thunder shield shattered, it directly blocked the evil god's incarnation's attack. Silver Dragon Inversed Scale Spear. The shadow of a silver dragon appeared on Sulen's body. Then, with a blinding flash of lightning, it suddenly attacked the evil god's incarnation in front of him. Endless lightning instantly wrapped around it. As the evil god, its power was completely opposite to Sulen's. The blood light on its body was constantly being worn down by the lightning. At this moment, Sulen suddenly felt his heart palpitate. A sense of danger enveloped his heart. Without hesitation, Sulen's body flashed as he tried to retreat. Boom! Just as he was about to retreat, a dazzling red light swept over him like a hot knife through butter. The lightning that had been wrapped around the evil god's incarnation was also worn down by the red light. Wherever the red light went, an evil, chaotic, and crazy corrosive energy came out. Although this kind of energy was not very damaging, it had a very disgusting ability. It could corrode other people, and it was very difficult to get rid of. But this kind of explosive power cost a lot of energy, and the cooldown time was very long. After using his talent, his sixth sense, to dodge the attack, Su Len rushed forward again. After the explosion, the evil god's body's blood light became even dimmer. A round of extremely effective chain of fireballs appeared again. After casting that spell, Su Len threw out 5 lightning whips. The evil god's incarnation was sent flying again. Boom! 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 The evil god's giant body was pierced again. The blood light on its body was used up. This time, its wounds did not heal as quickly as before. Instead, there was a hideous gash. Now, Su Len could see the evil god's incarnation's scary, twisted soul. That was the evil god's soul origin, but it was not all of it. It was only a part of it. This time, to take revenge on Su Len, the evil god had given up a lot. It had given up a part of its soul origin and god power. Evil gods relied on blood sacrifices and sacrifices to grow. But blood sacrifices made gods crazy. Evil gods were a collection of chaotic powers, and now, they were even crazier. The evil god in front of Han Sen had lost its sense of self. It had become a collection of all kinds of negative energy and chaotic consciousness. When Su Len absorbed the god's divinity, it had a strong consciousness. So, when he absorbed the god's divinity, he spent a lot of effort to wipe out the consciousness of the god's divinity. That was difficult, and it took a lot of time. But it also brought him many benefits. He would not be affected by the consciousness of the god's divinity. He would not become a puppet controlled by the god's divinity. Dazzling lightning swept across. After losing its powerful regenerative ability, the evil god's incarnation was no match for Su Luen. Under Su Luen's constant attacks, it could only retreat again and again, with more and more wounds appearing on its body. Chapter 490. Thunderstorm Spell. Dark clouds gathered in the sky, and countless lightning bolts rolled back and forth in the dark clouds. A bolt of lightning as thick as a water bucket descended from the sky and instantly struck the evil god's incarnation. Without enough power to quickly regenerate, endless lightning instantly drowned it. Lightning Spear. Endless lightning power instantly gathered in Sullen's hand, and a lightning spear formed completely from lightning power appeared in Sullen's hand. In the next second, he threw the lightning spear and instantly hit the evil god's incarnation, which was still in a stiff state. Time seemed to freeze at this moment. The evil god's incarnation's body was extremely stiff and fixed on the spot. The evil god's incarnation's body shattered like crystal glass, and powerful lightning burst out from its body, illuminating the entire valley in an instant. The evil god's incarnation's entire body disintegrated into countless tiny dust particles bit by bit. A gust of wind blew past, and the evil god's incarnation's body disappeared without a trace. Ah! A miserable wail sounded. Just as the evil god's incarnation's body was completely destroyed, the countless souls that it had absorbed just now surged out of its dissipated body. As these souls had only been absorbed for a short period of time, the evil god of the Heartless had no time to absorb and digest these souls. Therefore, these souls were basically still complete. They were just a little distorted because they were contaminated with the chaotic energy of the evil god's body. Soul Binding Spell. A spiritual light rose from Sullen's body and quickly imprisoned a part of the evil god's soul core that wanted to escape. Endless lightning power turned into lightning chains. These chains crisscrossed and weaved into a large net in midair, as if enveloping the entire world. The evil god's soul, which was mixed in with a large number of spirits, couldn't escape in time and was completely sealed. As a spiritual light flashed, the large net in the sky instantly enveloped downwards. All the spirits and the evil god's soul were trapped in the lightning net. Soul Binding Spell. Su Len took out more than 10 magic gems from his storage space. Bolts of lightning turned into countless chains and pulled all the spirits into the magic gems. Those low-level spirits were directly sealed in the magic gems. As the evil god's soul, Su Len specially used a high-quality magic gem to seal it. As the evil god's soul was sealed into the magic gem, the entire magic gem turned purplish red. A crazy and chaotic aura was constantly emitted from the gem. Just standing nearby made people feel very uncomfortable. Su Len snapped his fingers, and the soul crystals floating in the air fell into his palm. Ding! The battle is over. Congratulations, host. You have successfully killed the evil god Heartless Divine Incarnation. You have received 368,000 experience points. You have obtained 30 high-quality magic gems. You have obtained 2 sets of Star Ocean Silver Sand. Congratulations, host. You have successfully killed the evil god Heartless Divine Power Incarnation. You have obtained Diamond Treasure Chest X2. Congratulations, host. You've won an epic victory. Congratulations, host. Your army has completely wiped out the evil god Heartless Believers gathering place. You have obtained 103,000 experience points. Evil God Heartless Stronghold Extermination Battle, Battlefield Level, High Legendary. February 1689 of the Huiyue calendar. You discovered a hidden stronghold of the evil god Heartless. After some preparations, you launched a war and successfully wiped out the stronghold of the evil god Heartless Believers. You also killed the evil god Heartless Divine Power Incarnation. Your name is widely spread across the continent. Prestige plus 15. Favorability of various Orthodox churches plus 30. Congratulations, host. Your experience points are full. You have leveled up. Current level, 30. You have obtained 2 free attribute points and 2 skill points. You have obtained Platinum Treasure Chest X2. As the battle ended, a series of system notifications rang in his ears. Su Len dispersed the energy on his body, and the rumbling thunderclouds in the sky also dissipated. The battlefield was a mess. The original altar had long since disappeared in the aftermath of the battle, and the surrounding village was only left with broken walls. Clean up the battlefield and kill all enemies. Leave no one alive in this battle. With Sullen's order, the Northgard city's army began a net-like search of the valley. Not all the enemies had died in the battle just now. Many had taken advantage of the chaos to escape to various parts of the valley, but because there was only one exit, these kobolds had nowhere to run. After arranging for people to clean up the battlefield, Su Len returned to the Northwind Tower. After leaving the follow-up matters to Hathaway and Chrissy, he went to the seclusion room to check on his harvest. The most precious thing in this battle was naturally the divinity crystal. Su Luen checked it and found that this divinity crystal contained 6 points of divinity. It could be said that this was the most divinity Su Luen had ever obtained. However, it wasn't easy to absorb this divinity crystal. He hadn't finished absorbing the Brain Hunter's divinity crystal, so he could only slowly absorb this divinity crystal. Currently, Su Len needed about a month to absorb a single point of divinity. If he wanted to absorb all of it, he would need half a year. However, this was already a fat piece of meat in his mouth. There was no rush to eat it. He opened the storage space and opened the 2 diamond treasure chests and the 2 platinum treasure chests together. A series of beautiful special effects flashed, and the sound of a system notification rang in his ears. Congratulations, host. You have successfully opened the platinum treasure chest. You have obtained the item 9 Transformations Golden Pill *1 bottle. Congratulations, host. You have successfully opened the platinum treasure chest. You have obtained the item Wishing Crystal *1 bottle. Congratulations, host. You have successfully opened the diamond treasure chest. You have obtained the item Nature God Crystal *1 bottle. Congratulations, host. You have successfully opened the diamond treasure chest. You have obtained the book Levitating Ring Theory and Production. When the light faded, Su Len couldn't wait to take out the 4 items to check. Su Len had already obtained a bottle of 9 Transformations Golden Pill. This kind of pill was very powerful. Each pill could increase 5 free attribute points. It was a rare item. Su Len beamed with joy as he put away the bottle of pills. The second treasure chest contained a crystal called the wishing crystal. Su Len curiously picked up the crystal and looked at it. This crystal looked clear and transparent. There were no impurities in it. It looked very beautiful. This crystal also contained a strange power. Su Len didn't know what this power was for. After playing with the crystal for a while, Su Len asked the system to appraise it. Wishing crystal, a special kind of crystal bred by nature. It has a special power. It is said that Jinn elemental spirits like this kind of crystal very much. When using the wishing spell, you can use the wishing crystal as an item of exchange. When negotiating with the Jinn elemental spirits, the wishing crystal can obtain a higher value. This is actually an item used for the wishing spell. After reading the introduction of the system, Sullen's eyes moved slightly. Although the wishing spell was said to be able to grant wishes, in fact, this spell had many traps and the price to pay was also high. Now it seemed that with this wishing crystal, Su Len could make a wish without paying any price. Of course, when using the wishing spell, one still had to strictly follow the rules of the wishing spell. The Jinn elemental spirit's ability to take advantage of loopholes was not inferior to the devils of Bator. In the past, there were more than 1 or 2 wizards who were cheated by these Jinn elemental spirits. The wizard who wished for immortality still didn't know which corner of the multiverse he was sealed in. The nature crystal was a green crystal the size of a palm. There was rich natural energy on it and even a little divinity of nature. This crystal could be directly absorbed to increase one's own divinity. It was much better than the divinity crystal Su Len had before. He didn't need to spend time to eliminate the evil consciousness in the divinity crystal. He could directly absorb it. Of course, in addition to direct absorption, this nature crystal also had other effects. For example, it could improve the surrounding environment. It could also be used to purify the power of pollution and chaos in the divinity crystal in Sullen's hand. Of course, this purification effect was limited. It could also be used directly on a druid. This would allow the druid to obtain a large amount of natural energy and even directly become a big druid. The nature crystal quickly turned in his hand. Su Len already had a plan in his mind. He was going to try it in a few days. The principle and making of floating rings. When he read this book, even Su Len couldn't help but laugh. This was simply like meeting a pillow when he was sleepy. He planned to build a floating city. In addition to the problem of energy, there was also the problem of the floating rings. The floating rings were the key to building a floating tower. At the same time, it was also an important part of building a floating city. The manufacturing technology of the floating rings was only mastered by a few wizard organizations. If the elemental pool was the energy source of the wizard tower, then the floating rings were the engine. The manufacturing of the floating rings required a lot of precious resources. At the same time, it also required a deep knowledge of runes and grandmaster alchemy skills. Su Len simply flipped through the book. This kind of floating rings required a lot of technical skills. He couldn't make it yet. The main material of the floating rings was mithril. Some adamantine, orichalcum, starry silver sand, arcane dust, and many other materials needed to be added. These materials were processed according to a special method and refined into a special silver alloy. Then, the runes were engraved on the floating rings according to a special method and pattern. Finally, a runic array was formed. Each rune was formed by a combination of a larger number of magic patterns. These runes were combined to form a larger runic array. There couldn't be any mistakes in the manufacturing of such a floating ring. Otherwise, there would be a big problem. If there was a problem with the floating ring during flight, the consequences would be terrifying. Su Len planned to study the book, The Principle and Making of Floating Rings, with Hathaway. Although he couldn't make it now, it didn't mean that he couldn't do it in the future. Now that his wizard level had reached the advanced level, it was only a matter of time before he became a legendary wizard. Chapter 491. The construction of the floating city could not be done by Hathaway alone. A floating city like the floating city, which was the ultimate magic creation of the Arcane Empire, required a lot of people to work together to build. Among other things, it was a big project just to enchant the floating city with hardening spells. If only Sulen and Hathaway were relied on, they would be busy for a long time. It required a lot of wizards to work, which was one of the purposes of Sulen and Hathaway establishing the Wizard Academy. The Wizard Academy was to continuously provide a large number of wizard talents for Sulen. Sulen did not expect the wizards to become legends, which was unrealistic. He only wanted them to be promoted to official wizards. And even if they were wizard apprentices, there were a lot of jobs that they could do. For Sulen, wizards were high-level talents. He had too many jobs that needed wizards, such as planting magic herbs, refining potions, enchantment equipment, building wizard towers, and daily maintenance. If it were not for the lack of manpower, Sulen would not have made the golem factory automatic. As for the way the black wizards cultivated their apprentices, in Sulen's opinion, it was a complete waste. Those who were strong and talented would learn. Those who were good at fighting would be arranged to become combat wizards. Those who were not good at fighting would be responsible for various logistics work. Those who were not talented could be planted with magic plants. In short, in Sulen's opinion, these wizards were all labor. The way the black wizards cultivated their apprentices was only brave and fierce. They might be strong for a while, but in the long run, they were far less developed than Sulen's way. Sulen's way would snowball and become stronger in the future. Moreover, the black wizards' way of cultivating their apprentices had a high chance of backfiring. That was why he used the black wizards' way of cultivating their apprentices. Sulen put away the principle and making of the floating ring, and took out the 9 transformation golden pill. His only attribute value was charm, which had not reached 50. The 2 free attribute points that he got from the upgrade were directly added to charm. Sulen's charm value increased to 35 points. Then he took 3 more 9 transformation golden pills and got 15 free attribute points. After adding all these points to charm, Sulen's charm value also reached 50 points. The increase in charm was a little different from other attributes. There seemed to be no change after moving his body, but Sulen felt that the elemental energy around him seemed to have become closer to him. With a snap of his fingers, a water ball appeared in front of him. Then the water ball turned into a mirror, and Sulen's appearance was reflected. The facial features of the figure in the mirror did not change much from before, but there were slight adjustments and refinements. His face was bright and clean, and his facial features were handsome and angular. His eyes were dark and deep, like a pair of black gemstones with a charming luster. His eyebrows were straight, his lips were red, and his teeth were white. His eyes were bright and clear, and his figure was elegant and graceful. His neck was long and slender, and his skin was white. This was not a human. Even if a god descended, it would not be better than this. Sure enough, I've become more handsome. Looking at himself in the mirror, Sulen was not surprised. This was his true appearance. Charm was not only about appearance, but also about elemental energy. Sure enough, even elemental energy was close to those who were good-looking. Sulen left the seclusion room and went to the astrology platform. He gave the book he got this time to her to study, then took Chris and Alex to the secret plane. He had gained a lot of good things this time, and he had already made a decision. He now had 3 divinity crystals in his hands. One of them was from the Brain Hunter, which only had 1 divinity left. The divinity crystal he got from killing the Heartless Incarnation had 6 divinity points, and the nature crystal he got from opening the treasure chest contained 2 divinity points. In total, he had 9 divinity points. The nature crystal had other uses, and Sulen could not absorb the remaining divinity for the time being, so he planned to let his maids use it. Sulen now had 9 divinity points, and he would reach the first critical point after absorbing 1 more divinity. He planned to distribute the remaining 6 divinity points to each of them first. Chris, Alex, this is for you. Sulen handed them 2 magic gems that emitted evil energy fluctuations. These 2 magic gems were sealed by the divinity that Sulen had extracted from the divinity crystal left behind by the evil god. Divinity crystal? Chris and Alex exclaimed in surprise when they saw the faint golden gems in Sulen's hands. Yes, divinity crystal. Sulen nodded. Although these are divinity crystals, the remnant consciousness in the divinity has not been cleaned up. When you absorb the divinity, you must remove the remnant consciousness, energy, and so on. If you don't want to be affected by the remnant consciousness in the divinity, it's best to clean it up before absorbing it. As soon as Sulen finished speaking, Chris and Alex grabbed the divinity crystals in his hands. In fact, both of them were divine creatures, and it was much more convenient for them to absorb divinity than for Sulen. Abyssal demons were actually creatures of the same level as angels. The strength of those demon lords in the abyss was comparable to that of the gods. Otherwise, abyssal demons would have courted death everywhere and caused trouble until now. Basically, as long as it was a secondary demon lord, there would more or less be some divinity on them. It was just that the divinity on a demon's body contained a lot of negative energy and all kinds of chaotic consciousness. If Chris wanted to advance, she would need to obtain the succubus queen's blessing and obtain the qualifications of an honorary nun. Of course, Chris would have to return to the abyss. Of course, Sulen would not let Chris return to the abyss, let alone let her accept the succubus queen's blessing. The succubus queen's blessing was not easy to obtain. The succubus queen, who was as beautiful as a delicate datura flower, was one of the most dangerous demons in the abyss. This bitch was known as the most dangerous woman in the abyss along with the spider queen Lolth of the infernal realm. Without the succubus queen's blessing, it was not impossible for a succubus to advance her bloodline. This required the power of divinity. As the most powerful force in the multiverse, divinity had many miraculous powers. It was not difficult for the little succubus Chris to advance to legend. Compared to Chrissy, Alex's bloodline source wasn't weak either. It was just that her bloodline was too ancient. Back then, the ancient gods had either fallen, gone missing, or gone into seclusion. Alex's bloodline was already very thin. If it weren't for the reversion of her bloodline, she would still be a harpy and not a winged person. Bloodline was Alex's advantage, but also her limitation. Fortunately, Alex was a wizard. Otherwise, if she wanted to advance, she would have to rely on her bloodline. It was just that her bloodline potential was almost exhausted. If she wanted to advance her bloodline again, she would have to rely on divinity. After Sulen gave the two of them the divinity crystal stones, Chris and Alex each found a place to go into seclusion. A little divinity crystal stone was not enough for them to directly advance, but it could make it easier for them to advance. Hidden Realm, Nature Oak. After a period of growth, the oak had grown to a height of more than 20 meters. As soon as Sulen arrived, he could feel a strong natural aura. The tall oak swayed gently when the wind blew. Sulen took out a Nature Divine crystal. He intended to use this Nature Divine crystal on this nature oak tree. Even if a mortal absorbed the power of divinity, they would be able to transcend mortality and obtain great power. If the nature oak absorbed the divinity, it would also be reborn. Of course, some preparations would be needed before this could happen. The nature oak was located in the Hidden Realm. Sulen had divided it into a special sealed space. Sulen took out his tools and began to build a magic circle on the ground. The level of the spell he planned to cast was a bit high, so it could not be cast without a magic circle. After learning from Hathaway for a while, Sulen had fixed his own shortcomings. Building a magic circle was not too difficult for him. As time went by, a complex magic circle began to appear little by little. Phew! Sulen stood up and let out a long breath. He looked at his masterpiece with excitement. It was his first time making a complicated rune circle like this. Looks like I'm quite talented. Normal wizards can't do this. Sulen stretched his wrist and put away his tools proudly. After finishing, Sulen took out a magic staff and stood in the center of the circle. Tower Spirit 1. Connect to the energy channel. Open the elemental pool. Powerful elemental energy gushed out from the elemental pool. The energy channel glowed faintly. Sulen gently inserted the magic staff into the center of the circle. A powerful energy suddenly appeared around Sulen. Wish! Bright light burst out from the circle. A powerful energy rushed into Sulen's body, and a melodious ancient chant sounded. As the spell ended, a terrible pressure shrouded the place. This kind of coercion made Su Luan feel a strong pressure. With the appearance of a magic aura, a high-space portal opened in midair. The next second, the portal reflected the light of divinity. A creature full of power and divinity appeared in front of him. Sulen narrowed his eyes. The figure in front of him was a tall wind elemental. She looked like a woman. She looked like a genie in a magic lamp. She held a quill pen and a contract in her hand. After seeing Sulen, she asked calmly, "Did you summon me?" "A demigod who is about to advance." "What wish do you have? Or what wish do you want to fulfill?" "As long as it's reasonable, it can be fulfilled." "A jinn, at least a jinn at the level of a god." Sulen was stunned for a moment. Then he reacted. He was a high-grade legend. At the same time, he also had divinity. Ordinary jinn at the level of a demigod were not qualified to respond to his summons. Only a jinn at the level of a god could respond to him. He read the 3 lines 4 or 5 times until he was sure that there were no problems. Then, he left his soul imprint on it. "Very good." Feng Juling gently waved his hand, and the signed contract dissipated with the wind. Then, a divine power enveloped Ling Ren and Ling Ren. Sulen took out the wishing crystal that he had already prepared from the storage space and said, "This crystal is your reward." Feng Juling's eyes lit up. His fingers moved slightly, and a gust of wind blew. The wishing crystal in Sulen's hand flew up and fell into his hand. After casually sizing it up, Feng Juling's palm turned over and directly put away the wishing crystal. "All right. According to the contents of the contract, if you pay the reward, I will give wisdom to the oak tree." Soul awakening technique. Divine power plus change reality. A beam of spiritual light descended from the sky and landed directly on the nature oak tree. The originally ordinary oak tree suddenly seemed to have something extra. Soon, a weak soul fluctuation was born from the oak tree. The soul light was extremely weak, just like a firefly. It seemed that it would be blown away by the wind. However, although this spark was weak, it was full of vitality. Instead of being extinguished, it began to grow. Seeing that the soul fire had slowly grown to a certain extent, the wind spirit god envoy withdrew his hand. "All right. The contract is complete. Goodbye." After that, Feng Juling said to Sulen, "Next time you have this kind of crystal and need to make a wish, feel free to summon me. My name is Alona's. Goodbye, little guy." Before his voice fell, the Feng Juling turned into a whirlwind and disappeared in front of him. The powerful pressure that shrouded the surroundings also dissipated. Most of the elemental gods were neutral. They rarely paid attention to other planes. In the records of the multiverse, the only large-scale war between the elemental gods was because the demons of the abyss wanted to expand and occupy the multiverse. As a result, as soon as they came out of the abyss, the elemental gods led the 4 elements to beat them up and swept the abyss. After obtaining the soul awakening technique, this natural oak tree had awakened its spiritual wisdom. However, its spiritual wisdom was very low and needed to grow slowly. After awakening its spiritual wisdom, this natural oak tree was no longer an ordinary tree, but had a trace of possibility. Although it had now awakened its spiritual wisdom, the hope of growing into a tree of life or even a world tree was very slim. However, it was still possible to make it stronger. Sulen took out the nature crystal from the storage space and modified the array of the soul awakening technique. Soon, a new array appeared in front of him. Sulen stood in the middle of the new array and took out a staff. Tower Spirit 1. Connect to the energy channel. Open the elemental pool. Powerful elemental energy quickly poured in and the whole array lit up again. Sulen took a deep breath and then began to chant an incantation. Soul awakening technique. Elemental energy rose from Sullen's body, and then the nature crystal in Sullen's hand flew up. Powerful elemental energy gushed out from Sullen's hand and a dazzling brilliance appeared. The nature crystal then turned into a golden light and instantly integrated into the nature oak next to it. As soon as the golden light integrated into the nature oak, the 20-meter-tall nature oak seemed to be inflated and began to grow rapidly. The surrounding elemental energy was instantly sucked away. Seeing this, Sulen immediately ordered Tower Spirit 1 to open the energy channel. Azure elemental water gushed out. With enough energy, the oak tree grew rapidly. In the blink of an eye, the oak tree had grown to 25 meters tall. With the addition of a large amount of elemental water, the oak tree continued to grow rapidly, but it had slowed down. As time passed, the oak tree finally stopped growing after reaching a height of 30 meters. A breeze blew, and the entire nature oak shook slightly. The nature oak faintly expressed a hint of joy. Its lush branches swayed slightly as if it was greeting him. The nature oak in front of him had fused with the nature divinity and was already a divine creature. The surrounding natural energy became more and more abundant, and the environment was constantly changing. He felt an aura of growth. Even the surrounding space was beginning to be affected. A surge of energy was transmitted from the nature oak into Sullen's body. This energy was very gentle. As soon as it entered his body, it integrated with Sullen's body. This energy dissipated in his body and began to quickly repair the hidden injuries Sulen had suffered in the past. At the same time, the violent power of thunder and lightning in Su Luan's body began to become gentle. Although the power of thunder and lightning was powerful, it was very violent. When Su Luan used it, he would hurt himself. In the past, when Su Kuan used the power of thunder and lightning, his body would also be injured. Fortunately, his regeneration ability was strong. After the energy fusion just now, the originally wild and untamed power of lightning suddenly became docile. After circulating in his body, it no longer harmed his body. Even the remnant evil consciousness he had when he absorbed the divinity was dispelled by this energy. The divinity had completely integrated into his body. Feeling the changes in his lightning energy, Sulen was overjoyed. He patted the nature oak's trunk. "Grow well here. No one will disturb you." The nature oak waved its trunk, and the rustling of leaves could be heard. Sulen stayed here for a while before sealing off the area again. This nature oak was still very young and weak. Its current abilities were more supportive, such as healing, purification, and accelerating the growth of plants. It would only become more powerful after it continued to grow. After sealing off the area around the nature oak, Sulen stretched his body and returned to his room in the mystery realm. At this time, Alex and Chris were already in seclusion. Sulen did not disturb them. After the two obtained the divinity, they began to remove the original consciousness of the divinity. Once the consciousness was removed, they would integrate the divinity into their bodies. The houses in the mystery realm were built with druid spells. Sullen's room was a big tree. Some people used mushrooms, some used pumpkins, and some used tree houses. All in all, the rooms were very varied. It looked like a fairy tale. After Sulen returned to his room, he also prepared to go into seclusion. With the nature oak's help, he had already absorbed the divinity. Sulen had a lot of divinity in his hands. He naturally wanted to absorb all of it as soon as possible. He was only one step away from becoming a demigod. After returning to his room, Sulen went to the training room and had Tower Spirit 1 open the energy channel. Rich elemental energy gushed out. Sulen sat on the rune circle of the training room and took out the divinity crystal. Soul extraction. A powerful energy appeared. Lightning turned into chains and shot into the divinity crystal. Lightning flashed, and the evil god's soul was slowly pulled out. P.S. Pulling out teeth is too painful. Floating Dream is going to pull out 3 wisdom teeth this time. Sob sob sob. It's so painful that I can't even write. I'll try to update every day. Chapter 493. Although it was only a part of the evil god's soul, it was still very powerful. It was just that it wasn't Sullen's match when it was alive, let alone after it died. Thunder sealing magic. Endless thunder and lightning wrapped around the evil god's soul. The phantom of the evil god's soul howled in pain as it floated above the gem. As energy crazily surged, Su Luan took a deep breath and a beam of light rose up. Divinity extraction. Streaks of dark purple soul energy slowly entered Sullen's body. This energy was full of evil, madness, and destruction. Su Len needed to extract the divinity from this chaotic soul energy. Su Len already had experience, and extracting divinity was a walk in the park for him. He sealed the chaotic, evil, and crazy soul energy into another magic gemstone. Soon, the gemstone used to seal the soul energy turned dark purple. This soul energy was full of all kinds of negative emotions. Although absorbing it could improve the soul energy and strengthen the soul origin, it would also corrode the soul. If one was not careful, they would become a fallen one, and their entire being would become crazy, bloodthirsty, and destructive. Su Len didn't want to become such a lunatic, so the best way was to use it to make a legendary rune. High-quality soul crystals were rare and very precious. Su Len only had one, which he obtained after killing the brain hunter and extracting all the divinity in its soul. Su Len gave the divinity crystal to Chris to absorb, and the rest of the soul crystals were not used yet. High-quality legendary soul crystals could be used to make legendary runes such as the Magic Breaker and Arcane Guard. Northfield City didn't even have a diamond golem, let alone a high-quality legendary golem like the Magic Breaker. Su Len slowly injected the divinity into his body. Soon, his body felt full and satisfied. Su Len immediately stopped absorbing the divinity, and then quickly used the thunder chain to reseal the rest of the evil god's soul. After extracting the divinity, Su Len still needed to absorb some of the divinity. At the same time, he needed to erase the remnant consciousness of the divinity. This step would take a lot of time, and this kind of thing could not be rushed. After absorbing the divinity, Sullen's negative energy aura also increased a lot. There were still 4 points of divinity left in the divinity crystal in his hand, and he could only slowly absorb them later. Ding! Congratulations, host, you have successfully absorbed 1 divinity. Ding! Congratulations, host, your divinity has reached 10 points. The power of divinity has begun to transform your body. You have successfully become a demigod. Divine power is changing your body. Faint golden energy emerged from Sullen's blood and began to wander around his body. Traces of golden energy penetrated deep into his bones, muscles, and organs. His body, which was already very strong, became even stronger. Dong dong dong. His heartbeat became more and more dull, like the sound of a war drum ringing in his ears. His blood was like mercury, rapidly flushing out the impurities in his flesh and bones bit by bit. As time passed, his bones also became harder and harder. The elemental energy in the isolation room surged, and a large amount of elemental energy quickly rushed into Sullen's body. The speed was getting faster and faster. After noticing that the energy in the isolation room was being consumed quickly, Tower Spirit Number 1 immediately increased the energy supply to the elemental pool. The surging elemental water rushed in quickly, and the originally low concentration of elemental energy was quickly replenished. Su Len absorbed the elemental energy faster and faster. The highly concentrated elemental energy washed through his body, and then merged into every part of his body. A vortex appeared around him, and as soon as the vortex appeared, it quickly grew bigger. In the blink of an eye, it covered the entire room. The vortex grew bigger and bigger, and soon formed a scene like a tornado. If a high-ranking wizard saw this, he would definitely recognize it. This was the extremely rare elemental siphon. Su Luan quickly absorbed the elemental energy, and his body also underwent earth-shaking changes under the influence of the divine power. From his bones to his flesh and blood, the golden light was thoroughly integrated into his flesh and blood. Even his soul began to transform under the influence of the divine power. At this time, if Sullen's soul was out of his body, he would find that his original soul had become extremely solid, and his soul was also tinged with a faint golden color. A large amount of energy flowed back and forth in Sullen's body. After his soul was reconstructed, the energy rushed to his body again. The divine power not only changed his soul, but also his body. Ding! Transformation complete. Congratulations, you have successfully become a demigod. Host has successfully become a demigod. You have received the demigod talent, demigod body. Host has successfully become a demigod. You have received the demigod talent, language proficiency. Host has successfully become a demigod. You have received the demigod talent, divine transcendence. Host has successfully become a demigod. You have received the demigod talent, immortality. Congratulations, host has become a demigod. Your understanding of the thunder territory has deepened. You have mastered more of the rule power, and your ability has been greatly improved. You have received the skill, Thunder's Fury. Host's divinity has reached 10 points. All attributes +2. The system's notifications kept ringing in his ears. Sulen slowly opened his eyes. A golden light flashed through his eyes, and the entire isolation room seemed to be lit up at that moment. As he woke up, the elemental energy gradually calmed down, and the elemental siphon disappeared. Sulen opened the system interface and began to look at the changes after becoming a demigod. At the top was the demigod body. Demigod body, this is the primary form of a god's incarnation. You, who have divine power, have surpassed the realm of mortals. Your body will not be hurt by ordinary weapons, and any weapons below the extraordinary level will not hurt you. At the same time, you will not fall sick. Your resistance to poison, curses, and other negative effects will be increased by 30 points. Your resistance to spells will be increased by 30 points. Language proficiency, divine ability. After becoming a demigod, you have automatically gained the ability to read all night. You can write most languages. Your literacy +15. Language proficiency and language proficiency work together. Sulen learned most languages in an instant. All living beings had this ability. Divine transcendence, demigods have integrated themselves with the power of the law. Their bodies have transcended the racial boundary and become a new race. Your own magic ability and resistance to spells have been greatly enhanced. You are immune to spells of the third circle or below. Whether it is the effect of spells or the damage caused by spells, they will not have any effect on your body. This ability made Sulen immune to spells of the third circle and below. With Sullen's high resistance to spells and magic defense, even a fourth circle spell would cause very little damage to Sulen. This ability was the ability of divinity. Legend had it that the gods with great divine power were immune to spells of the seventh circle and below. Immortality, after obtaining enough divinity, the mortal body will be transformed. Your lifespan will be greatly enhanced. Your life will be greatly strengthened. You will not age, and your physical fitness will always be in a state of abundance. The state of immortality did not mean immortality. Immortality only meant that one's face and strength would not age. One's physical fitness would also be at its peak. As for aging, it would only appear when one reached the end of one's life. Immortality was the literal meaning. Those who obtained immortality would have a near-eternal lifespan. As long as they were not killed by others or died by accident, they would be able to live forever. Of course, this talent also had its drawbacks. The person who obtained this talent would age. Although this aging would be very slow, it would also affect one's combat effectiveness. Only with the two talents of immortality and immortality could one be considered truly immortal. Of course, one could still be killed. After becoming a demigod, Sullen's strength had improved again. However, if he wanted to improve further, he would need to reach 30 points of divinity. In addition to these, Sulen also received a reward of +2 to all attributes. After his attribute points reached 50, he would need to spend 3 free attribute points to increase it by 1 point. This time, the +2 to all attributes was equivalent to an increase of 10 points, which was equivalent to 30 free attribute points. If Sullen's attributes had not reached 50 before, he would have received +5 to all attributes. Of course, the upper limit was 50. Just after Sulan received +2 to all attributes, he heard the system prompt again. Congratulations, host, your strength attribute has broken through 50 points. You have received the legendary talent, Epic Strength. Congratulations, host, your physique attribute has broken through 50 points. You have received the legendary talent, Epic Physique. Congratulations, host, your agility attribute has broken through 50 points. You have received the legendary talent, Epic Agility. Congratulations, host, your spirit attribute has broken through 50 points. You have received the legendary talent, Epic Spirit. Congratulations, host, your charm attribute has broken through 50 points. You have received the legendary talent, Epic Charm. Hearing the system prompt, Sulan only felt a surge of power in his body again, and then slowly merged into his body. Epic Strength, legendary ability, your strength has exceeded the scope of human beings. When attacking, your strength will cause an additional 3 points of damage. You will permanently gain an additional 3 points when making a strength test. At the same time, when attacking, there is a chance to cause crushing damage to those whose strength is lower than your own by 5 points. In any strength test, you will gain an additional 1 epic point. After all of Sullen's attributes had broken through 50 points, he had directly gained 5 legendary talents. It could be said that his accumulated talents and toughness had now surpassed that of a dragon in its prime, except for the legendary dragon species. According to his current physical fitness, it would be polite to say that he was a humanoid dragon. Chapter 494. Epic Physique, legendary ability. Your physique is far beyond the range of humans. When you receive any damage, you will gain an additional 3 points of damage reduction. Your test of fortitude will gain a permanent 3 points bonus, and you will gain an additional 30 points of HP. When you receive any test of physique, you will gain an additional 1 point of epic value. With the Epic Physique talent, Sullen's already thick defense was increased again. With his current level of tankiness, ordinary attacks could not hurt him at all. Even many warriors who specialized in defense would find it difficult to reach this level of epic physique. With Sullen's original legendary strength, legendary regeneration, and legendary tenacity, his vitality was so strong that it made people's hair stand on end. Sulan felt that even if he did not add any defense, he would not be hurt at all if he jumped into the magma now. The magma was like a hot spring to him. Epic Spirit, legendary ability. You have a comprehension ability that is far beyond ordinary people. No spell model can be difficult for you. Your memory ability and analysis ability have been further improved. When casting any spell, you can fully understand and analyze the structure of the spell. This allows you to perfect and modify certain spells. In any test of spell penetration, you will gain a permanent 1-point bonus. Sulan did not feel much change in Epic Spirit. He just felt that his mind was clearer and his thinking had become more agile. There were some other benefits that he needed to experience on his own. In addition to these, Epic Dexterity and Epic Charm were not weak either. Sullen's strength could now be said to have skyrocketed. Sulan moved his body and closed the energy channel. The elemental energy in the seclusion room returned to normal. Only then did he get up and leave. In fact, Sullen's divinity value was now. If he obtained a divine spark, he could almost try to become a god. Becoming a god was both difficult and simple. In addition to divinity, one also needed a divine spark and a divine spark. To put it bluntly, the clergy was the scope and responsibility of the gods. If Sulan wanted to become a god, the clergy would be ready-made. It would be the god of thunder, or thunder, clergy. In addition to the clergy, there was also the divinity. It was not easy to obtain a quintessence. A quintessence was a materialized substance formed by the laws of the multiverse. If one had a thorough understanding of one of the laws, one could attempt to condense a quintessence. Of course, there was another way, and that was to kill other creatures with a quintessence. There were many creatures with divinity. For example, the demons of the bottomless abyss would drop divinity fragments from the lesser demon lords. As long as one killed a few lesser demon lords, they would be able to synthesize a complete divinity fragment. Of course, archangels, divine envoys, and elemental spirits could also drop divinity fragments. Of course, if one felt that they were strong enough, they could also directly kill gods. If the weakest weak divine power god left the divine kingdom, the challenge rating would be around level 35. If the god was in the divine kingdom, then the challenge rating would be increased by 5 to 10 levels. Fighting in the divine kingdom was completely at the god's home ground, and the strength of others would be suppressed there. The best time to kill a god was when the god's body came to the material plane in the form of a saint. The limited number of deicides in history were basically completed under such circumstances. The opportunity to become a god could only be encountered by chance. Although the gods had destroyed the arcane kingdom, Sulen did not have any prejudice against these special and powerful beings. Many arcanists in the arcane kingdom had also sought the opportunity to become a god, but in the end, there were still very few who succeeded. The study of the gods had always been in the hands of the top wizards. Otherwise, there would not be such a forbidden spell as divine ascension, and there would not be creatures like the demigod Lich. There were many wizards who wanted to become a god. After having the above three things, the next step was to have believers. Every righteous god would have its own church. These churches were responsible for preaching, cultivating believers, and providing the gods with the power of faith. The power of faith would be transformed into the divine power used by the gods. The road to becoming a god was a sea of corpses and blood. In history, except for the lucky one, the other strong mortals who had succeeded in becoming a god had killed their way from the material plane to the abyss of hell, and then killed their way back and forth in the abyss of hell. There were even some ruthless characters who had killed their way through the lower planes on the road to becoming a god. Their names were taboo in many worlds. They were the kind of existence that could not be mentioned at all. Others might want to become a god, but Sulen did not have such an idea. The gods were subject to too many restrictions. In the secret realm, Sulen had successfully advanced into a demigod and came out of seclusion. As soon as he opened the door of the seclusion room, Sulen saw Chris and Alex sitting outside in a daze. Their white jade-like fingers were tapping on the table irregularly, and their expressions were absent-minded. Sulen closed the door of the seclusion room and asked, "What's wrong with you two?" "Ah, Sulen, you've come out of seclusion?" Chris heard Sulen's voice and immediately stood up. "Are you okay? There was such a big commotion just now." "I was worried about you," Alex asked. Sulen moved his body and said proudly, "Of course I'm fine. Just now, I've successfully advanced into a demigod." Demigod. Alex and Chris looked at Sulen in disbelief. "You've advanced into a demigod?" Sulen did not say anything. Instead, he released his territory directly. Alex and Chris instantly felt an invisible pressure enveloping them. It was very difficult for them to move their bodies, and a sense of alarm rose in their hearts. Seeing that the two were having difficulty breathing and their bodies were shaking, Sulen withdrew his territory pressure. For them who had not yet reached the legendary level, his current pressure was too strong. Whoosh! As soon as Sulen withdrew his territory pressure, the two's bodies went limp and were about to fall. Sulen hurriedly supported them. "How are you? You almost scared me to death." Chris patted her towering chest and complained. Sulen chuckled. "By the way, how's your divinity absorption going?" Chris and Alex looked at each other, then stood up. With a slight tremble, a pair of wings stretched out from behind them. Chrissy's wings were devil's wings, which were very similar to the fleshy wings of bats. However, devil's wings were dark red and looked more ferocious. Sulen had seen Chrissy's devil's wings before. Now, devil's wings were obviously stronger and larger. In addition to these, some small scales had also grown on her wings, and her defense had also increased by quite a bit. Alex's wings were feathered, and her wings were even bigger than Chris's. Right now, Alex's wings looked like they had a layer of metallic luster, looking very hard. On the feathers of her wings, there was also a layer of faint golden light, making her wings look very beautiful. In addition to these, Sulen also discovered that Alex's ears had become a little sharper, her skin had become as white as milk, and her body seemed to have the smell of the wind. Her long hair was also covered in a strange luster, and there was a faint golden color at the ends of her hair. The most obvious change was her pupils. Even Alex didn't realize that her pupils had become like emeralds, faintly emitting a faint golden light. These changes showed that Alex's bloodline had become denser. Beside him, Chris also underwent a similar transformation. Her skin became even whiter, smoother, and more supple. A golden radiance flashed in the depths of her eyes, and the charm she exuded became even stronger. Every move she made was astonishingly charming. She looked like a beautiful black rose. The shackles that had originally prevented them from becoming legends had also loosened. On Sullen's attribute panel, there was an additional, divine creature, awakening, label in their attribute panels. Their experience slots had also been filled by more than half, and they were very close to leveling up. Of course, although they had become divine creatures with divinity, they were still the lowest level of divine creatures. Above divine creatures were demigods, and above them were weak gods, followed by weak divine power, intermediate divine power, great divine power, and great divine power. Demigods were generally descendants of gods. Most of the weak gods were gods born from some small races, and were usually subordinate to the mainstream gods. Orthodox gods were generally intermediate divine powers, and the main god of a divine system was basically a great divine power. As for the great divine power gods, so far, there were very few of them. Gods such as Gaia Mother, Nero the god of death, and the god of justice, like Alex and Chris, were completely unorthodox. It seems that you've absorbed it well. Sulen nodded with satisfaction. This divine power is really powerful. I feel like I've been reborn. Alex said as he folded his wings. Chris nodded repeatedly like a chick pecking at rice. She went around to Sullen's side and hugged Sulen with her jade-like arms. The amazing elasticity of her chest pressed against Sullen's back. Feeling that Sullen's breathing had suddenly become a little faster, Chris smiled slightly and said, "Master, can you give us a little more divine power?" "Yes, I can." Divine power has the ability to turn something rotten into something magical, but it's not easy to get this kind of power. Sulen shook his head and said, "After you've completely digested the divine power, and the residual negative energy consciousness in your body has been completely removed, I'll give you more divine power. Don't think about it now." Ah. Chris was disappointed, and she was a little dejected. Next to her, Alex also became a little disappointed. Greedy. Sulen shook his head. If you continue to absorb divinity, be careful that you'll eventually be affected by the residual consciousness in the divinity, and you won't even have a place to cry. You're tuning into the Romantic Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.